Story 1. This story is titled, My Family Excluded Me from the Hawaii Christmas Party at My Sister's Request. So I kicked her and her husband out of my house where they lived rent-free and ignored my parents' phone calls. Now they are begging me. Hey guys, I've been lurking here for a while and figured it's finally my turn to vent. So I, 23 female, have always been the other sibling in my family. My older sister Carly, 28 female, has been the golden child since the day she was born. Seriously, if you could win awards for being a favorite, she'd have a shelf full of them by now. Growing up, everything Carly did was perfect. She could bake a slightly burnt cake, and my parents would call her a culinary genius. Meanwhile, I could ace a test, and all I'd get was, "That's nice, Elena. Did you hear Carly just got promoted to team captain?" To be clear, Carly isn't a terrible person, at least not all the time. She's just Carly. She walks into every room like she owns it, and my parents treat her like she does. She's smart, successful, and married to Brad, who's basically her yes man. The two of them are like the human version of a power couple Instagram account, perfect on the outside, but if you scratch the surface, you'll find a whole lot of entitlement. Anyway, this all started last summer when I came home from college for break. I was already tired from juggling 2 part-time jobs while keeping up with classes. College isn't cheap, and my parents help a little, but not nearly as much as they did with Carly. When she was in school, they covered her dorm, gave her an allowance, and even bought her a car. For me, it's more like, good luck, kiddo. Hope you figure it out. I showed up at the house, hoping for a quiet few weeks. The minute I walked through the door, though, I could feel the Carly effect in full swing. Mom hugged me for what felt like 2 seconds before rushing off to the kitchen, probably to check on whatever special dish she was making. Dad gave me his usual awkward back pat before disappearing into the living room. And then Carly showed up, breezing in like she owned the place, with Brad trailing behind her, carrying their luggage. They were staying for the week, apparently. "Hey, little sis," Carly said, flashing her perfect smile. "Hey, Carly," I said, forcing a smile. Brad gave me a nod. He's not a bad guy, just there. He follows Carly around like a lost puppy, agreeing with everything she says. Dinner that night was classic Carly. Mom pulled out her fancy lace tablecloth, the one she only uses when Carly's around, and made a 3-course meal. I'm not kidding. For Carly, it's steak and roasted veggies. For me, it's, "We have leftovers in the fridge, Elena." We were halfway through the meal when Carly decided to make her big announcement. She put her fork down and leaned back, like she was about to deliver a TED Talk. "So," she began, "Brad and I were thinking, Christmas is just around the corner, and we've been working so hard. We deserve a little break. And we thought, what better way to relax than a family trip to Hawaii?" Mom gasped and clapped like a kid. "Oh, Carly, that's such a wonderful idea, isn't it, honey?" Dad nodded. "Fantastic idea, sweetheart." I sat there, chewing on my green beans, waiting for the part where they'd ask my opinion. Then Carly turned to me, her smile sharpening into something less friendly. "Elena, do you think you can afford it? Or should your big sister cover your share?" The room went quiet. Even Brad stopped chewing his steak. My face burned, but I kept my voice steady. "I can manage, thanks." Carly raised an eyebrow. "Are you sure? It's going to be around $5,000 per person. Flights, hotels, activities, it all adds up. I just don't want you to feel left out if you can't swing it." I almost choked on my water. $5,000. That was more than all my savings combined. And I was only making minimum wage at my part-time jobs. But I'd rather eat ramen for the next 6 months than accept Carly's charity. "I can manage," I repeated. "Okay, if you say so," Carly said, shrugging. She turned back to Mom and Dad, completely ignoring me. "So, we were thinking of staying at this gorgeous beachfront resort. It's all-inclusive, of course. And there's a spa. Oh, and Brad found this amazing helicopter tour. We just have to do it." Mom was practically vibrating with excitement. "That sounds incredible, Carly. We've never been to Hawaii before." Dad nodded. "You two always have such great ideas." Carly smiled like she'd just won an award. "Well, you know, Brad and I are used to organizing things. It comes with running a business." Here it was, the part where she had to bring up the restaurant. "It's been a lot of work," she continued, "but it's paying off. We've got a loyal customer base, amazing reviews, and we just hired another chef last month." "That's incredible," Mom gushed. "Elena, you should really learn from your sister. She's so driven. You could pick up a few tips from her about setting goals and following through." I bit my tongue so hard it hurt. The rest of the dinner was more of the same. Carly talking about how hard she and Brad work, Mom and Dad hanging on every word, and me sitting there, feeling like an extra in a play about their perfect little family. After dinner, Carly caught me in the hallway. "So," she said, crossing her arms, "are you really coming? Or is this going to be one of those things where you back out at the last minute because it's too expensive?" "I'm coming," I said, clenching my fists. She gave me that smirk again. "Good. I'd hate for you to miss out. Just don't embarrass yourself, okay? I mean, it's Hawaii. You don't want to be stuck eating sandwiches while the rest of us are enjoying the nice stuff. I didn't respond. I just nodded and walked away, already planning how I was going to prove her wrong. And that was the last thing Carly said to me that night, and I spent the rest of the evening in my room, pretending to study, but mostly just stewing. My sister's entire personality was built on one-upping me, and somehow no one ever called her out on it. Every word out of her mouth was either a brag or a backhanded comment. I was determined to save up for this Hawaii trip, not just to prove her wrong, but because I was sick of being treated like the poor kid who didn't belong. But that dinner left me feeling like I was 10 again. Nothing had changed. The same eager nods from Mom, the same proud smile on Dad's face, the same feeling of being invisible. Carly was still their golden child, just as she'd been since we were kids. 5 years between us might as well have been 50. For all the difference it made in how our parents saw us, they never said it outright, but their actions spoke volumes. Carly was the one they believed. Thank God for Grandpa Thomas. He was the only person in my family who ever made me feel like I mattered. While Carly had Mom and Dad wrapped around her finger, Grandpa treated me like I was just as important as her, maybe even more sometimes. He'd always pull me aside at family gatherings, slip me a $20 and whisper, "Don't let your sister steal all the attention, kiddo. You're special too." Let me tell you more about him. Grandpa was successful in his own right, a businessman who worked his way up from nothing. He had this big old house on Maple Street with a wraparound porch and a backyard that felt like it went on forever. It was my favorite place in the world. When I was a kid, he'd let me sit on the porch swing and listen to his stories about how he built his business or how he met Grandma. Carly liked to say the house was dated and needed a serious makeover, but to me, it was perfect. Sure, the paint was peeling in a few spots and the floors creaked, but it felt like home in a way my parents' house never did. When Grandpa passed away during my freshman year of college, it hit me hard. I was sitting in my dorm room when Mom called, her voice shaking as she said the words, "Grandpa's gone." I couldn't even respond. It felt like the floor had been ripped out from under me. The funeral was quiet and small, just the way he would have wanted. It was held on a cloudy day, the kind where it looks like the sky might break open at any second. Carly showed up in a sleek black dress that probably cost more than my laptop, clinging to Brad. Mom and Dad hovered around her, making sure she had everything she needed. Meanwhile, I sat near the back, feeling out of place even at my own grandpa's funeral. After the service, we all went to the attorney's office for the reading of the will. I wasn't expecting much. Grandpa wasn't the type to flaunt his wealth, and I figured whatever he had would go to Mom and Dad. But when the attorney started reading, I realized just how much Grandpa had thought about everything. "To my daughter Linda," the attorney began, "I leave the sum of $25,000. Mom nodded, dabbing her eyes with a tissue like she'd expected as much. "To my granddaughter Carly," the attorney continued, "I leave the sum of $150,000. Carly's eyes lit up. She turned to Brad and whispered something I couldn't hear, but it didn't take a genius to figure out she was already planning how to spend it. Then the attorney looked at me. "And to my granddaughter, Elena," he said, "I leave my house on Maple Street, including all its contents and surrounding property." The room went silent. Carly was the first to break it. "Wait, what? Elena gets the old house?" She actually laughed out loud, like it was the funniest thing she'd ever heard. "That's... wow. Okay, sure. Enjoy that, Elena. Maybe you can sell it and buy yourself something decent to wear." Mom shushed her, but she didn't really sound upset. "Carly, don't be rude," she said, even though she was smiling. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. I was too stunned. I wasn't sure how to feel about it. On one hand, I loved that house. It was the one place that had always felt safe, and knowing Grandpa had left it to me made me feel like he still believed in me, even after he was gone. But on the other hand, I was a broke college student. Houses aren't cheap to maintain, and I knew the property taxes alone would be a nightmare. Still, I thanked the attorney, took the keys, and promised myself I'd figure it out. Grandpa trusted me with this, and I wasn't going to let him down. Over the next few months, I started visiting the house whenever I could. It wasn't in the best shape. Some of the pipes needed fixing, and the roof had a small leak, but it still felt like Grandpa was there. His fishing rods were still propped up in the corner of the living room, and his favorite leather chair was exactly where he'd left it. Of course, Carly couldn't leave it alone. Every time she came over, she'd make some snide comment about how outdated the place was. "You should just sell it," she said one afternoon, sitting on the couch like she owned it. "I mean, what are you even going to do with a house like this? You can't afford to fix it up, and honestly, it's kind of a dump." I bit my tongue, like I always did around her. Then suddenly Carly wanted to stay at the house, the same one she kept mocking. The moment she said, "So, Brad and I were thinking we could stay at the house for a bit while we sort some things out with the restaurant," my stomach sank. I knew that tone. It wasn't a question. It was a statement, disguised as one. "I don't know," I started, trying to sound neutral. It's just until things settle down, Carly added quickly, flashing her perfect smile. The restaurant's been crazy, and we just need a breather. Brad, standing behind her, nodded like a backup dancer. Yeah, it's only temporary. A couple of months, Max. Before I could respond, my mom chimed in from the kitchen. Oh, Elena, don't be selfish. They've got so much on their plate. Your family. You should want to help. I felt cornered. On one hand, I didn't want them there. Sharing space with Carly is like being stuck in a competition you never signed up for. On the other hand, saying no would paint me as the villain of the family. My mom's guilt-tripping tone sealed the deal. Fine, I said, forcing a smile. You can stay. At first, it wasn't terrible. They mostly kept to themselves, and I figured they'd be out in a month or two. But weeks turned into months, and soon it was like they'd taken over the entire house. Brad filled the garage with his tools, even though he barely used them. Carly replaced Grandpa's old armchair with some overpriced monstrosity she called modern chic and started reorganizing the kitchen like it was her personal domain. The worst part? They weren't paying a single dime in rent, not a penny. When I tried to bring it up with my parents, they just brushed me off. Family helps family, Elena, my mom said, like that was supposed to erase the frustration brewing inside me. I kept telling myself it was temporary, that they'd be out soon. But deep down, I knew better. Carly always got what she wanted, and no one ever told her no, not even me. While I studied for midterms in my cramped dorm room, my sister and her husband lived rent-free in my house every time I came home for breaks. I had to ask permission to visit what was legally my own property. Let's get back to the present. Now fast forward a bit, and after that summer dinner, I started working myself to the bone to save up for the Hawaii trip Carly had so graciously included me in. Between my campus cafe job in the mornings and library shifts at night, I barely had time to breathe, let alone enjoy what little life I had. My diet consisted mostly of instant noodles and cheap granola bars, and I hadn't bought anything new in months, but I didn't care. I was determined to go on that trip, if only to prove to Carly that I wasn't the failure she seemed to think I was. By late November, I'd finally saved up enough. It wasn't easy, but seeing that $5,000 in my bank account felt like a victory. Carly called me one evening, her tone brisk, like she was doing me a favor by even picking up the phone. We need to finalize the bookings, she said. Have you got your share ready? Yeah, I said, already opening my banking app. Good. Transfer it to me tonight. I don't want to risk prices going up. I sent her the money immediately, my hands shaking slightly as I clicked confirm. Watching my account drop back down to double digits was nerve-wracking, but it was worth it. I was finally going to Hawaii to treat myself. December 23rd rolled around, and the house was buzzing with excitement. Well, Carly and Mom were buzzing. I was mostly just trying to keep up. Carly kept talking about all the activities she had planned. The dinner cruises, the snorkeling trips, the spa days. She even picked out matching outfits for the family photos we'd apparently be taking. The night before we were supposed to leave, I packed my suitcase with a mix of excitement and relief. After everything I'd been through, I finally felt like I'd earned this trip. But the next morning, things started to feel off. Mom and Dad were unusually quiet, avoiding eye contact whenever I walked into the room. Carly and Brad were acting normal, but in that overly casual way people do when they're hiding something. I tried to shake it off, chalking it up to pre-trip jitters. At breakfast, Carly cleared her throat, and the room went silent. So, before we head out, we need to talk, she said, her tone serious but with a hint of fake sympathy. I set my fork down, already feeling uneasy. Okay, about what? Carly glanced at Brad, who nodded like they'd rehearsed this. The restaurant. Well, we've hit a rough patch. Brad and I have been running the numbers. They aren't what we projected, and the trip is costing a little more than we expected. We had to make some adjustments to the budget. I was so confused, and the whole vibe shifted. What kind of adjustments? I asked. Well, Carly said, drawing the word out like she was trying to soften the blow. We've decided it's best if you don't come with us. Your contribution is helping cover the rest of our costs. I stared at her, waiting for her to laugh. But she wasn't joking. What? I finally managed to say. Carly sighed, like this was hard for her. It's nothing personal, Elena. It's just that Brad and I never had a proper honeymoon, and this trip is really important for us. You understand, right? Wait, I said, my voice shaking. I already paid my share. I worked double shifts for months to save up for this. Mom jumped in, her tone overly patient, like she was explaining something to a child. Elena, you have to understand. Carly and Brad are under a lot of stress with the restaurant. This trip is a chance for them to recharge. Family helps family. But I'm family too, I said, my voice rising. I paid for this trip just like everyone else. How is it fair that I get left behind? Dad avoided my gaze, staring down at his coffee mug like it held all the answers. Carly, meanwhile, just shrugged. Life isn't always fair, Elaine. Besides, someone needs to stay back and watch the house. That was it. That was their big justification for stealing my money and kicking me off the trip. I was so angry I could barely see straight, but I knew there was no point arguing. Mom and Dad were firmly on Carly's side, as always. I lashed out to my room. I spent the rest of the day there, listening to the sound of suitcases being zipped and last-minute plans being made. No one came to check on me, not even Mom. By the time evening rolled around, I'd made my decision. The next morning, I woke up early and joined them on the porch as they loaded their luggage into the taxi. Carly was in high spirits, chatting about the resort's amenities and all the Instagram-worthy moments she had planned. Brad was his usual silent self, nodding along as he loaded the bags. "Don't forget to water the plants," Mom said as she climbed into the taxi, "and check the mail every day." Carly leaned out the window, flashing me a smile that was anything but friendly. "We'll send you pictures so you don't feel too left out." She laughed and walked past me. I waved and smiled, playing my part perfectly. "Have a great trip," I called out as the taxi pulled away. As soon as they turned the corner, I dropped the act. I definitely wasn't going to let them get away with it, and I knew exactly what I wanted to do. As soon as their taxis disappeared around the corner, I went inside, grabbed my keys, and drove straight to Grandpa's house, my house. I had spent the past year biting my tongue, staying quiet while Carly and Brad treated my inheritance like their personal kingdom. But after what they'd pulled with the Hawaii trip, I was done playing nice. Walking through the front door felt surreal. The place didn't even look like Grandpa's house anymore. Carly had replaced almost everything, from the furniture to the curtains. The warm, cozy space I grew up loving had been transformed into something cold and impersonal. Even the walls felt wrong, painted in dull grays and whites instead of the soft greens and yellows Grandpa had always preferred. I stood there for a moment, taking it all in, and then I got to work. The first thing I did was grab every box and suitcase I could find. Carly and Brad had left plenty behind, probably because they assumed no one would dare touch their stuff. I went room by room, methodically packing up their designer clothes, their overpriced decor, and even the little knickknacks Carly had scattered around to make the house hers. Grandpa's old study was the hardest to deal with. It used to be my favorite room in the house, with its cozy leather chair and shelves full of books. Now it was filled with Brad's junk, random tools, stacks of paperwork, and a collection of ugly modern art pieces that didn't match anything else in the house. I found their important documents in a filing cabinet and packed those too. I wasn't about to throw away anything they might actually need, but I wasn't leaving it here either. If they wanted their stuff back, they could come and get it from storage. By the time I finished packing, the living room was filled with boxes and suitcases. It was almost satisfying, seeing all their things stacked up like that. Like I was finally taking control of something they'd stolen from me. Then I called a moving company. I explained the situation. Yes, it was last minute. And yes, it was Christmas Eve. But I needed everything out of the house as soon as possible. They quoted me triple the usual rate, and I didn't even flinch. "Just get it done," I told them. While I waited for the movers to arrive, I walked through the house one more time. With all of Carly and Brad's stuff packed up, it felt a little more like Grandpa's place again. His fishing rods were still in the corner of the garage, untouched. The old kitchen table, the one with the wobbly leg, was still there too. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. The movers showed up a few hours later. I directed them to the boxes in the living room, and they started loading everything into the truck. They worked quickly, probably because they wanted to get home to their families, and within an hour, the house was empty of Carly and Brad's presence. After they left, I made one more call, to a 24-hour locksmith. I wasn't taking any chances. Carly and Brad still had keys to the house, and I didn't trust them not to barge back in whenever they felt like it. The locksmith arrived just before sunset, and by the time he finished, every lock in the house had been changed. "Anything else you need?" he asked, packing up his tools. "No, that's it," I said, handing him a tip. "Thanks for coming out on such short notice." He nodded and left, and I stood there in the doorway, staring out at the quiet street. For the first time in what felt like forever, the house was mine again. That night, I made myself a simple dinner and sat at the old kitchen table. It wasn't glamorous, but it felt right. I could almost hear Grandpa's voice in the back of my mind, telling me stories about his childhood or offering advice on life. "You did good, kiddo," I imagined him. After dinner, I wandered into the living room and sat in the one piece of furniture I'd refused to let Carly replace, Grandpa's leather chair. It was old and worn, with cracks in the material and a slightly lopsided cushion, but it was still the most comfortable seat in the house. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through Instagram. As expected, Carly had already started posting photos from Hawaii. There she was, lounging by the pool with Brad, both of them grinning like they didn't leave me alone here. "Living our best lives," the caption read. I rolled my eyes and put my phone away. I wasn't going to let her ruin this moment. Instead, I focused on making a plan. I wasn't just going to pack up their stuff and change the locks. I was going to take back control of my life. I started drafting an email to a property management company I'd looked into a while back. If Carly and Brad couldn't respect the fact that this was my house, then I'd find tenants who could. By the time I finished, it was late and I was exhausted. But for the first time in months, I felt like I could actually sleep. I went upstairs to my old room, the one place Carly hadn't bothered to touch, and collapsed onto the bed. The glow-in-the-dark stars Grandpa and I had stuck to the ceiling years ago were still there, faint but comforting. As I drifted off, I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. For once, I wasn't letting Carly walk all over me. This was my house, my inheritance, and my life, and I was finally taking it back. I couldn't wait to see their reaction when they came back, and I was ready for whatever they decided to throw my way, because this time, I'd had enough. And as expected, the day after Christmas, my phone started buzzing nonstop. At first, it was just a couple of texts from Mom, asking me to call her. Then, there was one from Dad, which is rare because he usually lets Mom handle everything. Finally, Carly chimed in with a string of messages that went from annoyed to outright furious. I ignored them all, but when the calls started coming in, rapid fire, Mom, Carly, Mom again, then Dad, I knew I couldn't avoid it much longer. I sighed, put my coffee down, and answered the next call. What the hell is going on? Carly's voice exploded through the speaker before I could even say hello. Why are all of our things in storage? And why don't our keys work? I held the phone away from my ear, letting her rant for a solid minute before cutting in. Because it's my house, I said even, and you've overstayed your welcome. Your house? Carly scoffed. Are you serious right now? Do you have any idea how inconvenient this is? Brad and I have been planning this trip for months, and now we come back to this? Inconvenient? I said, my voice rising despite myself. You want to talk about inconveniences? Let's talk about how you stole my money, excluded me from the trip I paid for, and left me here to babysit a house you treated like garbage. How's that for inconvenience? There was a pause, just long enough for me to think I'd actually gotten through to her. Then Carly laughed, a short, sharp sound that made my blood boil. You're being so dramatic, she said. It's not like you were actually going to enjoy the trip anyway. You've never been the adventurous type, Elena. We were doing you a favor. A favor? I repeated, barely able to keep my voice steady. Yeah, Carly said, like it was obvious. And now you're acting like a spoiled brat because we used the money for something important. Family helps family, remember? Funny how that only seems to apply when it benefits you, I shot back. But sure, Carly, keep telling yourself that you're the victim here. Before she could respond, I hung up. Then my mom called. I considered letting it go to voicemail, but I knew she wouldn't stop until I answered. Elena, she said, her voice sharp and accusatory. What were you thinking? Throwing Carly and Brad out like that? They're family. Are they? I asked, unable to hide the bitterness in my tone. Because they sure didn't act like family when they stole my money, the one I worked hard to earn, and left me behind. Don't be ridiculous, Mom said. They didn't steal anything. They needed help, and you were in a position to provide it. You should be proud of that. Proud, I repeated, laughing without humor. You want me to be proud of being treated like a doormat? Mom sighed, the way she always did when she thought I was being unreasonable. Elena, you're blowing this way out of proportion. Carly and Brad are going through a tough time, and you're making it worse by kicking them out of the house. Where are they supposed to go? I don't care. It's not my problem, I said flatly. But it's not my problem anymore. Of course it's your problem, Mom snapped. You're being selfish, Elena. I didn't raise you to be like this. Selfish? I said, my voice rising again. You want to talk about selfish? How about the fact that Carly and Brad lived in my house rent-free for months, trashed the place, and then turned around and stole $5,000 from me? Or how about the fact that you and Dad let it happen and didn't say a word? If anyone here is selfish, it's obviously you. Shut up, Mom said, her tone icy. I'm not going to argue with you anymore. Fix this, Elena. Now. Before I could respond, she hung up. For the rest of the day, my phone kept buzzing with messages and calls. Mom, Dad, Carly, even Brad chimed in with a passive-aggressive text about family loyalty. I ignored them all. By the time evening rolled around, I was exhausted, not physically, but emotionally. I sat on the couch, staring at my phone as it buzzed for what felt like the 100th time that day. Finally, I picked it up and sent a single message to the family group chat. I'm not fixing anything. The house is mine and I've made my decision. If you want to talk about loyalty, maybe start by looking in the mirror. Then, I put my phone on silent, set it on the table, and walked away. I felt the satisfaction of standing for myself and defending what's actually mine. After a week, my phone, which had been buzzing nonstop for hours, now sat still on the coffee table. No more calls, no more messages. It was almost eerie, but also freeing. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't letting my family's drama dictate my life. They could call me selfish or ungrateful all they wanted, but I knew the truth. I wasn't the villain in this story. The next morning, I got an email from the property management company I'd contacted a few days earlier. They'd reviewed the house and had already started lining up potential tenants. Seeing their response felt like a small victory. Carly and Brad may have treated my inheritance like a free vacation home, but I wasn't going to let them ruin it forever. By the time New Year's rolled around, the house was officially listed as available for rent. The company assured me they'd handle everything: background checks, maintenance requests, even collecting rent. All I had to do was sit back and let them do their job. Meanwhile, Carly and Brad had officially moved back in with my parents. I heard about it through the family grapevine, mostly from my cousin Jessica, who's never been great at keeping secrets. "They're staying in your old room," Jessica said during one of our weekly calls. "Carly's already complaining about the lack of closet space, and Brad keeps hogging the TV in the living room. Your mom's losing her mind." I couldn't help but laugh. It was petty, sure, but after everything Carly and Brad had put me through, the thought of them cramped into my childhood bedroom felt like poetic justice. As the weeks passed, the messages from my family grew less frequent. Mom still called occasionally, but her tone had shifted. She wasn't angry anymore, just tired. "Elena," she said during one of our last conversations, "don't you think it's time to let this go? Carly and Brad are struggling. They need support right now, and you've turned your back on them." "They're not struggling, Mom," I replied. "They're just facing the consequences of their actions for once. There's a difference." Mom sighed. "I just wish you could see things from their perspective." "I did," I said, "for years. And all it got me was an empty bank account and a house full of their junk. I'm done bending over backward to make everyone else happy. It's time I start thinking about myself for a change." Mom didn't have much to say after that. By mid-February, the house was officially rented out to a young couple with a baby on the way. They loved the place, especially the backyard, and promised to take good care of it. Knowing the house was in good hands was a huge relief. With the rent covering the property taxes and then some, I finally had some breathing room financially. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was drowning. I even managed to save up enough to treat myself to a weekend getaway with some friends. Nothing fancy, just a cabin in the mountains, but it was exactly what I needed. Meanwhile, Carly and Brad's situation wasn't going quite as smoothly. Jessica kept me updated, whether I wanted her to or not. "They're driving your parents insane," she said during one call. "Carly's always complaining about how unfair you were, and Brad just sits there agreeing with her. I think your dad's about to snap." "Good," I said, laughing. "Maybe they'll finally get a taste of what it's like to deal with her full time." By the time spring rolled around, Carly had stopped trying to contact me entirely. I'd blocked her on Instagram after one too many passive-aggressive posts about loyalty and family values, and her calls had dwindled to nothing. Mom still called occasionally, but even those conversations were getting shorter. The funny thing is, I thought I'd feel guilty about it all. Cutting ties with my family, standing up to Carly, taking back my house, I thought it would weigh on me, make me second-guess myself. But it didn't. If anything, I felt lighter. One night, as I sat on the porch swing of my rented house, sipping a cup of tea, I found myself thinking about Grandpa. I wondered what he would have said if he could see me now. "I'm proud of you, kiddo," I imagined him saying, just like he used to when I was a kid. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I had done something right, something for me, not to please anyone else or live up to someone else's expectations. It might not seem like a big deal to you guys, but for me, it felt like finally taking a breath after being underwater for years. Tell me in the comments if you ever had one of those moments where you realize you're done being walked over, because that's exactly what this felt like. Thanks for sticking until the end. Story 2. My mom told me, "I wish I'd aborted you," after I refused to take the blame for what my golden sister did. My sister kept blaming me, but I stood my ground. Now her life collapsed. Hey Reddit. Growing up, my younger sister was always my mom's favorite, and I got used to it. But one night changed everything. It started with a simple phone call and ended with my whole family seeing sides of each other we didn't expect. Here's what happened. So this whole thing started years ago when I was 22. I'm in my 30s now, but it still sticks with me like it just happened. My sister was 18 at the time, and we were both still living in the same town. We weren't super close, but I always thought we were all right. I mean, we were siblings, we argued here and there, but I didn't think she hated me or anything. Looking back, I was really naive about how she saw me. My parents are decent people, but very different in how they see things. My dad is a straight shooter. He's practical, logical, and he's worked his butt off his whole life. He owns a few businesses and is the kind of guy who believes in fairness and earning your place. My mom, on the other hand, is more emotional. She's protective, sometimes overly so, and she always favored my sister. Like, it was obvious to everyone. Family members joked about it, but my mom never denied it. She'd just smile and say, "She's my baby." Growing up, I noticed the difference, but I tried to ignore it. I was the older kid, so I was expected to be more responsible. I had to babysit, run errands, handle things around the house, and basically play the good son. My sister got away with everything. She'd lie, break stuff, talk back, and my mom would just shrug it off or defend her. Dad would call her out, but he was always the minority vote. Honestly, I thought it was just a normal family dynamic, even though deep down I knew it wasn't fair. I remember a time when we were about 10 and 6. She broke my mom's favorite vase while running around the house, and without even asking, my mom blamed me. I swore it wasn't me, but she didn't care. I got grounded for a week, and my sister sat there watching cartoons like nothing happened. Stuff like that happened so many times it just became normal. By the time I was 22, I had moved into my own apartment, working and going to school. My sister was finishing high school, thinking she ruled the world. She was popular, had a ton of friends, and my mom practically worshipped her. Dad was proud of me because I was paying my own bills. But that didn't seem to matter to Mom. Anyway, that's the stage when my parents decided to go on a trip. They loved skiing and booked a week away. They asked me to look in on the house just to keep an eye on things and be a backup adult, but said my sister would be staying there. They told her straight up, no gatherings, no nonsense, keep the place in one piece. And they reminded her more than once because she had a history of pushing boundaries. She nodded and said, okay. I figured she'd do her thing, watch TV, maybe have a couple friends over. I didn't think much about it. The day after my parents left, my phone buzzed. It was my sister. Hey, she said, all sweetness. So, I'm having some people over tonight. It's going to be really fun. I need you to do me a favor. I already knew where this was going. What kind of favor? Nothing big, she said quickly. Just pick something up for me on your way home. You can come by too, meet some people, maybe even someone cute. It'll be fun. I actually laughed. Nope, not happening. You know what Mom and Dad said, and I don't want to get involved. Instant switch. Are you serious? You're ruining everything. I already told people. Everyone's expecting this. That's your problem, not mine, I said. You should have asked before inviting half the town. She snapped, voice getting sharp. God, you're so boring. You never help me with anything. You think you're better than everyone just because you're older. I'm not better. I just know when something's stupid, I shot back. You're about to get yourself in trouble, and you want me to be part of it? Not happening. She replied, you're so selfish. It's just one little thing. Why do you always make things harder for me? I said, because it's not my job to cover for you every time you want to ignore rules. End of story. Fine, she yelled. Forget it. You're useless. Cool, I said, and hung up before she could keep going. I thought that was it. I figured maybe she'd be mad for a day or two, and life would move on. I underestimated her. She went full steam ahead with her plans. That night, I was at my apartment, studying and watching TV. But on social media, I started seeing posts about some big get-together. People tagging her, talking about this crazy night. I just rolled my eyes. It was typical her, always pushing limits. Now, here's the thing about our town. It's not huge, and the cops get bored. Any loud noise or commotion gets attention fast. So guess what? Someone called it in. Cops showed up. I didn't hear about that until the next day, but apparently it wasn't pretty. People scattered, and she got caught. The next morning started like any other. I woke up late, made some food, checked my phone, and planned to do some laundry and boring chores. My sister wasn't even on my mind. I figured whatever she did the night before was over and done. Maybe a mess at the house, but nothing crazy. Then there was a loud knock. Not friendly. I looked through the peephole and saw 2 officers. My stomach dropped. They asked if I was me, came inside, and started asking about my parents' house. I told them my sister was staying there. They started in with questions like they already knew the answers. Where was I last night? Did I go by the house? Did I bring anything? I said no, I was at work, then home. They didn't look convinced. Then they told me my sister said I was the one who made the whole thing possible. I just stood there stunned. I hadn't even been near the place. I told her no when she asked me for help, and now she was blaming me? It hit harder because it was family. They said I had to come with them and I wasn't under arrest, but I had to come in. I asked if I could grab a jacket and my phone. They said yes. I kept thinking it was a mix-up, but when someone official is writing things down and staring at you like you're guilty, it feels different. I told them again I was at work, then home, but they just said we'd talk at the station. They put me in the back like I was some kind of problem. I was watching the buildings go by and thinking about how stupid everything was. I pictured my sister at the house with people and loud music and a big mess, and then her deciding I should take the blame because it was easier for her. I felt angry, but mostly I felt numb. That numb feeling where your chest is tight, but your head is just buzzing. At the station, they took my phone and asked the same questions over and over. Where was I? Who could prove it? Did I buy or move anything? I stayed calm, gave exact times, told them about work cameras and the ones at my apartment, and said my car never left. I even offered my banking app to show no purchases. They nodded but didn't look convinced. Then they said they'd called my parents. I hated that part. I knew my dad would listen, but my mom? She'd believe my sister first. When they said my parents were flying back early, I felt half relieved and half sick, knowing this was about to blow up bigger than I wanted. They asked me to give a longer statement, so I did. I included everything. Facts only. I asked again about the cameras. The officer finally took notes on that and said they'd request footage. I gave them my work's address, the name of my supervisor, and the name of the apartment manager. I even told them the exact space number where I parked the night before. Then I called my dad. He picked up on the second ring. I barely got the words out before he told me to slow down and tell him what happened, step by step. I did, and he listened. He didn't interrupt. He didn't accuse. He just said, "All right, we're coming. Don't say anything you're unsure of. Stick to facts." Then my mom got on the phone, and everything felt tense again. She didn't yell, but she kept saying, "Why would your sister say that if it wasn't true?" I told her I didn't know. I said maybe she panicked. She said, "This is such a mess," and then handed the phone back to my dad. They kept me overnight for questioning. I wasn't charged. By the time evening rolled around, the officers had more info. They'd looked up my workplace hours and matched video times to my exit. They hadn't gotten the apartment footage yet, but they said they'd asked. My bank records were easy. I signed a form and they checked. Nothing matched what my sister told them. It wasn't, "You're free to go yet," but at least the tone changed. They weren't talking to me like they'd already decided I was guilty. Morning came, and they let me rinse my face in a tiny sink. A guy came by with some papers and said things were moving. He didn't promise anything, but he wasn't cold about it either. He asked me if there was anything else they should know. I said yes. My dad keeps his liquor cabinet at home for guests, and I told them my sister could have taken from there instead of getting anything from me. I hated saying it because I knew it would make my dad feel betrayed. But if the truth hurt, it hurt. Eventually, they brought me to a room and told me my parents had arrived. When they walked in, my dad looked tired and focused. My mom looked like she hadn't slept at all. I said, "I'm sorry," even though I hadn't done anything wrong, because I hated that they had to fly back for this. My dad just hugged me. My mom stood a few feet away. She finally asked me, why would she say that? I said, because she didn't want to deal with the consequences. I could see my mom didn't want to hear that. My dad put a hand on her shoulder and then asked the officers to walk us through what happens next. They said they were waiting on more footage, and that they were also going to send someone over to our house to check the cabinet. My mom stiffened at that. My dad just nodded. He said, "Do what you need to do." After that, they let me leave but told me not to go anywhere far. My dad drove me back to my apartment while my mom rode along. Mostly quiet. My dad kept asking little questions. What exactly did she say? Did she mention anyone else? Did she admit she took anything? I told him everything I knew. She called me, wanted me to help her. I refused. Then she flipped and tried to put me under the bus. When we got to my place, my dad told me to grab any receipts or anything that might help. My mom just kept shaking her head. She wasn't crying, but her face was tight. She kept saying things like, "She wouldn't lie like that," and "This is just too much." I didn't bother arguing with her because I knew she wasn't going to believe me until it was shoved in her face. Later that day, Dad went straight to the house with the officers. I didn't go. I didn't want to see my sister. I stayed home, watched my phone light up with notifications and messages from cousins and aunts asking what happened. I didn't reply. I didn't know what to say. I didn't want gossip. I just wanted things fixed. When my dad came back, he looked exhausted. He had a small bag and said, "Evidence." They'd checked his cabinet. Stuff was missing and half empty. My mom kept saying, she panicked, she's scared, she didn't mean it. More worried about her future than the fact she almost ruined mine. Over the next few days, Dad showed the officers everything. Photos of the cabinet, my work hours, security footage of me going straight home, even video of my car parked all night. My bank records were clean. Meanwhile, my sister kept changing her story. First I drove over, then she claimed she came to my place. But nothing matched. No car seen, no proof. Every lie just made her look worse. When it was finally clear to everyone that she was lying, my dad didn't say much. My mom finally spoke up, saying things like, "She's just scared. She didn't mean it." But you could tell even she wasn't sure anymore. And me? I was just tired. I wasn't even angry the same way I was before. It's like when you get so disappointed you can't even yell, you just want it to stop. That night, I heard a knock on my apartment door. It was my mom. For a second, I actually thought she might be there to say sorry. I let her in, and she didn't even sit down before starting. You need to fix this, she said, voice sharp. Fix what? I asked. This thing with your sister. Just tell the police you made a mistake. Say you gave it to her. They'll let it go easier if you admit it. She's just a kid. She can't have this on her record. I froze. You're kidding, right? I didn't do anything. Why would I lie and ruin my own name for her? She said, she's 18. She has her whole future ahead of her. You're older, you'll recover. You have a job, your life is already started. This could destroy her. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So you'd rather destroy me? Your son? For her? She's my baby, she snapped, almost like it explained everything. You've always been strong. You can handle this. I felt my chest tighten. You're asking me to lie to the police? Do you even hear yourself? She screwed up, Mom. She lied about me and nearly got me arrested. She panicked. She didn't mean it. My mom's voice was rising now. You don't understand what it's like for her. She's been under so much pressure. Under pressure? I nearly laughed. She had a party and threw me under the bus because it was easier. And you're still covering for her. Or, do you even care what that does to me? You're being selfish, she shot back. You've always been so cold with her. You think you're perfect, but you're not. I just stared at her. Selfish? She lied. She almost wrecked my future. And you're standing here acting like I should take the hit for her. You've always taken her side. Always. That's not true, she snapped. You're just bitter because she's younger and gets more attention. I couldn't even hold back then. Attention? You treat her like she can do no wrong. No matter what she does, you cover for her. Even now, when she's hurting the people who care about her. She's your favorite and you can't even admit it. My mom's face went red. Her voice cracked when she shouted, I wish I'd aborted you. It hit me like a punch to the chest. I didn't even answer. She grabbed her purse and slammed the door so hard the neighbor opened theirs to look. I stood there, then picked up my phone and called my dad. Told him everything word for word. He didn't even sound surprised. Just angry. I'll handle it, he said. And later, I found out they had one of the biggest fights of their marriage. My dad told her straight up, if she kept defending my sister's lies and couldn't see what was happening, he'd leave. That was the first time I realized he saw everything for what it was. The next day, he called me and said, we're doing counseling. It's either that or this family's done. When we went, it was rough. My sister sat there acting like she didn't care. My mom sat stiff. My dad did most of the talking at first. Then it was my turn, and I laid it all out. I talked about the phone call, the accusations, the arrest, but also the years of favoritism, all the little things I had ignored growing up. I even had a list I'd written down. Times she lied. Times my mom believed her no matter what. Times I got punished for nothing. The counselor kept quiet while I talked. Mom tried to jump in every few minutes with, she was just stressed. Or, you know she didn't mean it that way. Like excuses mattered more than the truth. My sister finally tried to say, that's not true. But each time I reminded her of the details. My mom tried to defend her, but Dad shut it down. That was the first time my sister actually stayed quiet. Counseling was tense. We sat like strangers at first, but that room gave me permission to finally speak. My mom tried to interrupt once, but the counselor stopped her and told her to let me talk. My dad was steady, watching and nodding as if to say, you see? My sister mostly stayed quiet, sometimes looking angry or embarrassed, but she never apologized. Around this time, the legal stuff was moving too. My dad hired a lawyer to push for a record correction and ensure I wasn't named as a suspect. The report still had my name in it. My dad wanted everything cleared. He was serious about making sure nothing stuck. He even told me to keep records of everything. Texts, calls, dates. He said, if she's willing to lie once, she might try again. That hit me hard, but he was right. Meanwhile, my sister's situation was not looking good. There were charges. Minor stuff compared to what could have happened, but still serious. She had been caught lying to the police, resisting when they came to the house, and she basically threw her own brother under the bus. My mom begged my dad to make it go away, but even she could see it was too late for that. My dad told her straight up, this isn't about saving her. This is about teaching her. The court stuff dragged on. I stayed out of it except when I had to provide proof. The officers actually apologized to me quietly. I appreciated the apology, though. When it was time for court, I didn't even sit with them. I stayed back. Watching my mom fuss over my sister like she was the victim was painful, but not surprising. My dad was calm, but you could tell he was disappointed. The lawyer did what lawyers do. My sister didn't even look at me once. She pled guilty to the smaller stuff because the evidence was stacked. The lawyer's whole thing was to make it seem like she was young and panicked, that she made a dumb choice but wasn't malicious. The judge issued city fines connected to the number of guests, probation for a couple years, and therapy. That therapy part was Dad's favorite. He leaned over to me after and said, "At least she'll have to listen to someone besides your mother now." I wish I could say this was the point she apologized. Nope. Not once did she say sorry. If anything, she looked mad. Like we were all against her. It was surreal. Here's this girl who caused all of this, nearly wrecked her own brother's reputation, cost my parents thousands, and she's sitting there like she's the victim. When it was over, I went back to my life. My mom and I barely talked for a while. She knew I was still hurt about what she said at my apartment. She'd text sometimes, "How are you?" But it felt hollow. I answered politely but kept it short. My sister stayed in her bubble. She did her probation, went to therapy because she had to, and pretended everything was fine. We'd see each other at family dinners sometimes, but she'd barely look my way. I kept my head down and focused on my stuff. A couple years later, she went off to college. My dad and I were getting along better than ever. He taught me things about his businesses and slowly trusted me with small tasks. My mom, well, she still tried to make excuses for my sister now and then, but even she was quieter about it. I think deep down she knew she messed up too. Then one day, my sister just left. She graduated college and moved to California. Barely said goodbye. Didn't call. My mom cried about it. My dad just shrugged and said, "She made her choice." I didn't care. Honestly, I felt relief. I didn't want the stress anymore. Meanwhile, I'm running one of my dad's smaller businesses by now. I've got a decent apartment, a car that's mine, bills are paid on time. I'm proud of myself because I worked for it. My dad always said he wanted me to earn my own stuff, even though he had money. It makes sense now because I know how hard it was for him to build what he built. My sister was living in California, as I mentioned. New job, new people, whole different world. She barely called my mom. She never called me. She never called my dad either, and I think that's what really broke something in him. He'd given her so much, even paid for school, and helped her land that job. He didn't even brag about it. He just wanted her to be okay. But she never said thank you. She just kind of ghosted all of us. Somewhere in there, I wrote about everything on Reddit. I didn't use names or details that could identify us, but I wanted to get it off my chest and hear what other people thought. Then one day she found my post. I don't know how. Someone must have sent it to her, or maybe she spends too much time on Reddit. Whatever the reason, she saw it. She called my mom first, screaming. My phone lit up like a Christmas tree with texts from my mom. "Why did you write about her? Take it down. You're making us look bad." I was at work, just sitting there staring at my phone like, really? After all this time, this is what makes her call home? Then my sister called me. I didn't even recognize her number at first. I answered and she went straight to yelling, "No, hello, nothing." It was like listening to a siren. I hung up. She texted me paragraphs after that, threatening, saying she'd sue, saying I ruined her image. I didn't answer. Then she called again, and this time I told her, "If you scream, I'm hanging up again." And guess what? She screamed. So I blocked her. But she wasn't done. She called my parents again, trying to get them to force me to delete it. My dad told her flat out, "It's his story. We're not getting involved." My mom, of course, was upset, saying it made her look like a bad mom. I told her, I didn't lie about anything. That shut her up for a bit. I finally talked to my sister one more time because she texted from another number. I answered because I was tired of the games. She started yelling about how I always had it easier, how she was never the golden child, and how I was exaggerating. I laughed. I told her I didn't care what she called it. She lied. I got dragged through hell for it, and she never even said sorry. She hated that I laughed. Then she said what my mom once said to me. "I wish mom never had you." I just said, "Well, cool. Bye," and hung up. That was when my dad decided to make things clear. He told her she was officially out of the will. He told her she'd get a small settlement and nothing else. She called him crying, said it wasn't fair. My dad told her what wasn't fair was her framing her brother and treating the family like trash. She blocked all of us after that. Months went by. We all kind of settled into life without her. My mom still missed her, but even she had to admit my sister caused her own problems. My dad and I got closer. He started teaching me bigger things. It was like finally being seen. Then, early this year, my sister showed up again. No call, no warning. She just showed up at my parents' door with some guy and a little plastic test. She said she was pregnant. 2 months along. My mom nearly cried from joy, but my dad wasn't buying it. He even suggested they take another test just to be sure. She actually did it, and it was positive. She said she wanted to make things right, wanted her kid to know their grandparents. My mom wanted to believe her so badly. My dad didn't. He said, "You can stay for a bit, but if you want a place in this family, you have to work for it." He laid it out. Therapy again, group talks, and she had to apologize to me. At first, she played nice. She smiled, she laughed, she acted like she was back in the family. But when it came time to talk to me, the act cracked. She asked me to meet her and the guy at a restaurant. I went, mostly because I wanted to see if she'd actually say sorry. We sat down, and right away I could tell it wasn't going to be real. She started mumbling. When her boyfriend told her to speak up, she elbowed him in the stomach. He excused himself. Then she leaned back in her chair and said, "I guess I'm sorry, but really this never would have happened if you just helped me that night. You always think you're better than me." I couldn't believe it. She was blaming me again. I said, "You still don't get it. You lied, you dragged me through hell, and you still want to make it my fault?" She shrugged like she didn't care and said, "Whatever. You're so dramatic. You got over it, didn't you?" I sat there quiet for a second because I wanted to see if she'd realize how stupid that sounded. She didn't. I told her she still didn't get it. I told her I was done. I paid my part of the bill and walked out. My parents found out because the restaurant has cameras and audio, and my dad knows the owner. They got the video that same day. My mom's first reaction wasn't anger. It was, "She's pregnant. She's emotional," still trying to soften the blow instead of admitting she was wrong. They played it for her, and when she heard herself say that, she went nuts. She yelled, stormed out, packed her things, and left. Drove straight back to California. I thought she'd stay gone for good, but then the calls started again to my parents. My mom especially. She sent texts, some polite, some angry, some just long rants. She sent ultrasound pictures, updates, even little digs like, "You'll never see your grandkid if you keep letting him talk about me." My dad stayed firm. He told her straight, "We'll support the child if you allow it, but don't think for a second that this erases what you did." And yet first my mom was torn. She's always been softer with my sister, and a grandchild was something she's wanted for years. She wanted to just forgive and move on. But even she couldn't ignore the video from that restaurant, hearing my sister basically admit she still blamed me. Meanwhile, I just stayed out of it. I was tired of the drama. My days were long, but I liked it. I was learning things about management, payroll, dealing with people, stuff I never thought I'd care about. It felt good to be trusted. And yeah, part of me enjoyed knowing that after everything, Dad trusted me with his work and basically cut my sister out. It wasn't about revenge. It was just finally being seen for what I did, not what I didn't do. My sister tried calling me once more, from another number. I answered because I didn't recognize it. She started off sweet, but within a minute she was saying stuff like, "You turned everyone against me." I didn't argue, I just said, "You did that yourself. You did." And then she started crying, saying she was alone, her boyfriend dumped her, and she didn't know what to do. For a second, I almost felt bad. Then she said, "If you had just covered for me back then, none of this would have happened." That snapped me right out of it. I said, "You're still blaming me? Grow up." Then I blocked the number. A couple weeks later, she sent a long message to my parents. She wanted money. She said the baby was coming. She needed help. My dad responded with his list. He said it wasn't negotiable. She read it and basically exploded through text, saying we were all horrible, saying Dad was controlling, saying I ruined her life. The thing is, even my mom didn't rush to defend her this time. She was sad, but she kept saying, "You need to change if you want help." That shocked me because my mom had always been her biggest supporter. I think she finally got tired too. So where we stand now is this. She's still pregnant. Last I heard, maybe 6 or 7 months by now. She's sending my mom updates, but they're short and to the point. No calls, no small talk. Dad kept following through on those plans, even talking about a fund like he'd mentioned before. I think he's hoping that when the baby's older, we'll be able to have some kind of relationship that's not poisoned by all this stuff. For me, life kept going. I stopped waiting for her to change. I stopped hoping for an apology. I realized some people just don't have it in them to admit they're wrong, especially when they've been told they're perfect their whole lives. My dad told me once, "We tried to raise you both right, but we made mistakes." She's going to have to learn the hard way. My mom told me recently she wants to try therapy again, just for herself this time. She said she finally sees how much damage favoritism did. She even said she's sorry for all those times she didn't believe me, for coming to my apartment that night and asking me to take the blame. She cried when she said it. I didn't know what to say, so I just said, thanks. It was weird, but it meant something. It's strange. My sister nearly wrecked our family years ago. She's still causing ripples. But somehow, through all of it, I got closer to my dad. My mom is starting to understand. And I'm actually proud of where I am. Our family is smaller now. There's a space where my sister used to be, but I'm learning to accept that. I know some people will say, but she's family. And yeah, she is. But family doesn't give you the right to wreck someone else's life and then act like it's fine. Maybe one day she'll figure that out. Maybe she won't. Either way, it's not my job to fix her. When I think about the kids she's having, I just hope she treats them better than she treated me, better than she treated our parents. I hope the baby grows up happy and doesn't have to pick sides or live with constant drama. My dad's already talking about setting up a fund for them. He says, the kid didn't do anything wrong. He's right. I'd like to meet my niece or nephew someday, but only if it's safe and healthy. People sometimes ask me if I'd take her back if she apologized. Honestly, I don't know. It would have to be real, not some fake half apology. She'd have to admit she was wrong, not just blame me like always. That day might never come, and that's fine. I'm done waiting for it. This whole mess taught me a lot. It taught me to keep records, to stand up for myself, and to not let guilt push me around. It taught me that parents can mess up too, but sometimes they can learn and try to fix things. And it taught me that being the responsible one sucks sometimes, but it can also pay off in the long run. Don't let someone else's bad choices define your life, even if it's family, even if you love them. Protect yourself. Speak up, because at the end of the day, you have to live with what happens, not them. So that's it. My sister's gone, I'm doing my thing, my parents are working on themselves, and maybe someday we'll all sit in a room and laugh about this. But if we don't, I'm okay with that. Story 3. My parents sued me because I refused to hand over my new truck to my brother. They lost the case, got hit with my legal fees, and when my cameras caught my brother slashing my tires in revenge, I let the police teach him what deserve really means. Hey, Reddit. My parents spent my whole life treating my brother like royalty and me like free labor. So I said screw it, built my own life, and finally got something that was mine. Turns out they weren't ready to let that go. Before everything exploded, here's how it all started. My name is Tyler Hayes, early 30s, heavy equipment mechanic and crane tech. I spend most of my life out on job sites in the middle of nowhere, running machines that weigh more than houses, and doing shifts long enough to forget what day it is. My family's back in Tulsa, Mark and Lisa Hayes, and my younger brother Blake, the permanent favorite. The dynamic is simple. I work, Blake receives. They never said it out loud, but it never needed saying. After years of living out of suitcases, eating whatever I could heat on a steel counter, and stacking almost every check I earned, I finally did something for myself. I bought the truck I'd been planning for longer than I ever planned anything in my personal life. A 2022 Chevy Silverado RST, dark blue, clean lines, everything exactly how I wanted it. Not a single inch of it came from anyone but me. I walked into the dealership, signed the papers, and drove it out feeling like I'd finally crossed a line I'd been chasing since I was 18. I still kept my old beater sedan, mostly for work weeks and days when I did not want anything touching the Silverado. It rattled, smelled like dust, and spilled coffee, and the radio worked only when it felt motivated. But it always started. The truck was for me. The beater was for everything else. When I finally got a stretch of days off, I pointed the Silverado toward Tulsa. I rent a small duplex on the south side of Tulsa, close enough to swing by my parents' place, far enough to breathe. I pulled into my parents' driveway late afternoon. The sun hit the paint just right, making that dark blue glow. I hadn't even shut the truck off when the front door opened and Blake stepped out. Hoodie, slides, hair messy, like he'd rolled out of bed at the crack of noon. His eyes went straight to the truck, locked on, no blinking. Oh, damn, he said, walking toward it with that grin he uses when he wants something. So, when you letting me take it out? There it was. Not admiration, not congratulations. Just the same entitled tone he's had since he learned how to ask for things without earning them. He circled the truck like he was doing an inspection he had authority for. I leaned against the door and answered with a dry, flat tone. Yeah, right after I hand you my PIN number. He laughed like I was joking. I wasn't. I made sure the energy in my voice didn't leave any room for imagination. He kept circling anyway, eyes going over every detail like he was planning upgrades for something that didn't belong to him. He reached for the handle. I hit the lock with the remote before he touched it. Relax, he said, acting offended. I was just going to check out the inside. You can check it out from exactly where you're standing. He blinked, confused for a second, like his brain couldn't process a boundary. To him, my stuff was always just temporary storage until he felt ready to claim it. The Silverado wasn't going to be one of those things. Mom stepped onto the porch, smiling too wide, doing her usual cheerleader routine for Blake. Dad followed her out, hands on his hips, scanning the truck from the stairs. Blake looked back at them, trying to get some kind of backup for his big brother shares everything act. Looks expensive, Dad said. Not impressed. Judging. Looks earned, I answered. Blake shrugged like he was the one allowing the purchase. Yeah, it's cool. You know I'd look good in it too. Good thing you'll never find out, I said. That wiped the smirk off his face for half a second. Then he switched to the fake laugh mode again, the one where he pretends he's not bothered so he can circle back later and try another angle. Blake doesn't drop things, he stores them. Mom came down the steps and hugged me, talking too fast about how busy they'd been and how Blake was just teasing. Dad kept staring at the truck like he was calculating its usefulness for somebody who wasn't me. I knew that look. I'd seen it every year I came home with new work boots or tools, anything I'd earned on my own. It was the look that said, "How long until this belongs to your brother?" Blake stepped beside me again. Seriously, though, you gotta let me drive it at least once. Like a christening or something. I gave him a half smirk. Yeah, the day you pay one bill in my life. He didn't like that answer. He didn't say anything back either, which told me he'd pocketed the moment for later. As the sun went down and they kept trying to joke their way into the truck, that familiar pressure settled in. The same pressure that always came with walking through this door. The expectation that I'd fold the way they taught me to. The same old weight waiting to tighten as soon as Blake wanted something. I didn't say anything about it. I didn't need to. But I knew this visit wasn't going to stay quiet for long. I grew up in a house where the rules weren't written anywhere, but everyone knew them. My dad, Mark Hayes, was an ex-Army NCO who believed volume solved everything. He'd bark orders in the kitchen like he was running drills on a parade field. It didn't matter if it was chores, grades, or the way you breathed. If something annoyed him, he turned it into a lesson. Mom, Lisa, didn't yell. She weaponized disappointment. She could turn any situation into your fault, even if you weren't in the room when it happened. Her favorite lines were things like, "Do you want to see your father upset?" Or, "You know Blake looks up to you?" She said it in a soft voice that made you feel like you were failing some invisible test. Between the two of them, the system was airtight. I started working early because nobody ever told me not to. By 10, I was mowing lawns around the neighborhood. By 13, I had a paper route I ran before school. At 16, I was moving freight in a warehouse after class, stacking pallets while other kids were stacking college brochures. None of that surprised anyone. Work was just what I did. If anything, Dad criticized me for not doing more. Blake, meanwhile, didn't have to do anything. If he forgot homework, Mom blamed the teacher. If he broke something, Dad blamed childhood energy. If he lied, they blamed his creative mind. And if he screwed up majorly, which happened often, they blamed whatever they could grab. The weather, his mood, his friends, me. He totaled a go-kart in the backyard once, smashed it into the fence because he thought drifting on damp grass was a good idea. Instead of consequences, Mom took him out for ice cream to calm him down. I spent the next weekend replacing fence boards and straightening the frame of the go-kart with tools I paid for myself. Blake walked around telling people he fixed it. Another time, he stole a neighbor kid's bike, repainted it, and rode it like he owned it. When the neighbor came to the door, Dad said it was a misunderstanding and wrote a check without looking at me, even though Blake tried to shove the blame onto me right in front of them. Dad didn't blink. Blake was the innocent one. I was the older one. Automatic culprit. School wasn't any different. If I came home with an A, Dad asked why it wasn't an A+. If Blake brought home a C-, they hung it on the fridge like he'd won a scholarship. Mom would say things like, "Blake tries so hard," while staring at me like I was supposed to clap. When I bought my first set of tools at 17, every dollar earned from stacking pallets, Dad said, "Good, now you can fix Blake's stuff too." It wasn't a joke. The expectation was real. My work was family property, and Blake counted as family twice. By the time I graduated high school, I knew exactly how the roles worked. I left for job sites because staying home meant spending my life propping up someone who wasn't even trying to stand. Blake stayed because he didn't have to do anything to survive. They kept him cushioned, protected, praised for existing. I wasn't jealous, not even once. I just didn't understand the point of raising someone who never had to earn anything. Eventually, I learned the truth that explained everything. They didn't raise two sons. They raised one prince, Blake, and one pack mule, me. My job wasn't to succeed. It was to keep Blake comfortable while he floated through life untouched. They never admitted that. They didn't have to. It showed in every chore list, every punishment, every Tyler, help your brother, and every Blake didn't mean it. So when Blake looked at my new truck like it had his name etched in the paint, it wasn't surprising. That was the pattern repeating itself. The difference now was simple. I wasn't 17 anymore, and I wasn't playing my assigned role ever again. 2 days into my visit, Mom texted me saying she wanted a quiet family dinner to catch up. No agenda, no hint of anything. Just a normal meal, supposedly. I knew better, but I went anyway. If nothing else, I wanted to see how long it would take for the real reason to surface. Their house looked exactly the same when I pulled up. Same patchy lawn, same porch light flickering like it had been dying for years. I parked the Silverado in the street instead of the driveway. No point giving Blake another reason to circle it like a stray cat. When I walked in, Blake was already sitting at the table, hoodie, phone in hand, pretending he hadn't been watching the window for my arrival. He looked up with that half-wounded, half-smug expression he'd mastered since childhood. "Hey," he said, tone soft and fragile, like he was recovering from an injury I caused. Mom appeared beside him with plates, smiling too brightly. "We're just glad you made it, honey. It's been too long." Dad stood behind her, arms crossed, sizing me up instead of greeting me. If I didn't know better, I'd think he was preparing to issue orders. Blake stayed quiet, letting the dramatics build. We all sat down. Small talk lasted roughly 30 seconds. They didn't care what I'd been working on or where I'd been assigned lately. They never did. They wanted to get to their point. Mark didn't waste time. "So," he said, leaning back like a judge about to pass sentence, "your brother has been struggling with transportation. His car's been acting up. You know that." I looked at Blake. He gave me a small, rehearsed sigh, shoulders slumped. Wounded Prince mode activated. Dad continued, "You're doing well out there. Good money, good hours, you can manage." Mom's breath hitched like she was warming up her crying routine. She didn't wait for my answer. She went straight into the tears. "Blake just needs something reliable, Tyler. He's had such a hard year. You know how sensitive he is." Blake kept his head down, hands folded like he was praying. Perfect performance. Then Mark said it, clean and direct, like he was stating something obvious instead of demanding something insane. "So we think it's reasonable that you let him take the truck. No buildup, no asking, just the decree." I didn't blink. "No." Mom gasped like I'd slapped the table. Blake's head jerked up. Dad stiffened. I set my fork down. "I paid for it. I'm keeping it. Simple. Final." Mom wiped her eyes. "Honey, please. We're talking about family. Blake needs a leg up." Blake nodded, adding a whisper soft, "It's not forever. Just until I get things sorted." I shook my head. "No. That truck is mine." Dad's face tightened. He swapped to the voice he used when he thought respect was automatic. "Don't be selfish, Tyler. Your brother needs help. You don't need that thing right now. Not like he does." "There's a difference between needing transportation," I said, "and needing someone else's property." Mom sniffed harder. Blake shifted in his seat like he was trying to look as fragile as possible. Dad leaned in, voice low but sharp. "You think you're above this family now? You think because you have a paycheck you get to talk down to us?" I looked him dead in the eye. "No, but I'm not handing over a truck I earned because you two can't say no to Blake." Dad's jaw clenched. "He's your brother." "Right. Not my dependent." Mom reached across the table like she could grab the decision out of the air. "Tyler, please, for once, do the right thing. There's nothing right about giving him my truck," I said. End of story. Dad tried one more angle, his usual father authority tone. "Watch how you speak in this house. You're forgetting your place." I gave him a small, cold smirk. "My place is behind my own steering wheel." Blake's face twisted. He wasn't used to me shutting things down without a negotiation. He muttered, "You always think you're better than me." "No," I said. "I think I work harder than you." Big difference. Dad pushed back from the table, tapping his fingers like he was deciding whether to yell or lecture. Mom was already breathing in hiccups. Blake whispered something about not being supported. Mom repeated it louder, framing it like evidence. I stood up. "Dinner's over for me." Mom grabbed her napkin like she was preparing for a funeral. Dad tried one last shot. "You're going to regret this attitude." I walked toward the door. "I regret driving over here." I didn't wait for a response. I didn't need one. When I got back to my duplex on the south side of Tulsa, the first thing I did was pull into the driveway, shut the truck off, and pull out the boxes I'd ordered a while back. Driveway and door cameras I'd been meaning to install but never bothered with. That night I mounted them both. Quick, precise, no hesitation. I didn't do it out of fear. I did it because I knew the pattern. When Blake didn't get what he wanted, he didn't let it go. And neither did my parents. 2 days after the dinner, I got a text from my cousin Riley asking if I was coming to Grandma's birthday dinner at Aunt Denise's place. Riley wasn't the type to stir anything, so I took it at face value. Nobody from my immediate family had mentioned it, but that wasn't unusual. They usually delivered information selectively. I showed up right on time. The driveway was full. Cars lined along the curb, porch lights on, voices inside. Looked like a real gathering. I grabbed a store-bought pie from the passenger seat and headed in. The second I stepped inside, I knew something was wrong. The living room wasn't set up for a birthday. No cake, no decorations, no presents, just chairs arranged in a wide circle. Aunts, uncles, cousins, everyone sitting stiff, eyes already on me. Grandma wasn't there. Aunt Denise cleared her throat. Your grandma wasn't feeling up to coming tonight. Sure she wasn't. Then I saw Mark and Lisa standing near the back wall like hosts of a talk show, and Blake slumped in a chair off to the side, hands clasped dramatically, looking like he'd been injured in some tragic event. It wasn't a birthday dinner. It was an ambush. I scanned the room once. Every seat filled. Everyone watching. The setup was obvious. An intervention, except nobody in the room could define what I'd supposedly done wrong. My parents must have told them something dramatic enough to get them all here, though. Mom stepped forward, voice soft and trembling. Tyler, we're just here to talk as a family. Dad followed with a stern nod, like this was court and he was the judge. Everyone is concerned about the situation. I looked at Blake, who was staring at the floor like the star of a made-for-TV tragedy. He didn't even look up to sell it harder. That was new. Usually he loved the attention. I took a slow breath. All right, I said. Let's hear it. Aunt Denise started, rehearsed tone and all. We think your parents are just trying to support both of you. They're worried you're being unnecessarily harsh. Uncle Pat chimed in. Your brother is going through a tough time. He needs stability. A cousin added, he just wants a fair shot. Every person spoke like they'd practiced the lines. Same phrases, same tone, same direction. Blame me, excuse Blake. Mark finally took center position. Your brother needs reliable transportation to get his life on track. You're financially secure. You can afford to share. Mom nodded, fighting tears. We thought you'd understand if you heard it from family, not just us. Blake finally looked up, adding a quiet and perfectly pitched, I'm not trying to take advantage, Ty. I just need help. He said it like I was the unreasonable one, like the truck magically belonged to him unless I defended it. I scanned the room again, faces full of expectation. They were waiting for me to fold in front of an audience. That was the whole point, pressure from every direction. Instead, I straightened up and said loud enough for every person to hear, if you're all here to beg for my truck, line up behind Blake. The answer is still no. Silence. A couple relatives looked away fast, like they'd just realized how ridiculous the setup was. Riley hid a laugh behind their hand. Uncle Pat muttered something into his shirt collar. Mom's face crumpled. Dad's posture stiffened. Blake actually flinched. A little twitch he tried to hide. I kept going. You dragged half the family here to guilt me into giving away something I bought. If you want to help Blake, go for it. Buy him a bus pass, a bike, another car. But my truck isn't on the table. Aunt Denise tried to salvage it. We're just trying to keep peace. Then stop staging interventions for a grown man who refuses to work, I said. That pushed a few people over the edge. My Uncle Ray stood up, clearing his throat. Well, maybe this wasn't the best idea. Cousin Madeline followed. Yeah, I didn't know it was about taking your truck. That wasn't how your mom explained it. A couple others nodded, murmuring. Mom tried to reel them back in. He's twisting it. I cut her off. No twisting. You lied to get me here. You used Grandma as an excuse. I looked around the room again. And you wasted everyone's time. Dad's jaw clenched so hard the muscle twitched along the side. We're talking about family responsibility. I stepped toward the doorway. Responsibility doesn't mean surrendering my property because Blake can't handle being an adult. That was it. Nobody tried another speech. Nobody blocked the exit. I walked out, got in the beater sedan I'd driven there, and left the house without looking back. An hour later, while I was back at my duplex, Riley texted me, just so you know, your parents planned that whole thing with Blake. They had talking points written out. A second message came right after. Most of us didn't know what it was really about. They said you were acting unstable. Total lie. I thanked them and set my phone down. The ambush hadn't convinced me to hand over anything. It just confirmed exactly what I already knew. If Blake wanted something, my parents would turn the entire family into tools to get it, and they'd barely try to hide it. The lawsuit showed up on a Thursday morning, dropped in my mailbox like a bad joke. A thick packet, my parents' names at the top, and a list of claims that read like they'd been written by someone who'd never been told no a day in their life. They said there was a family understanding. They said the truck was intended for Blake. They said I was withholding property promised to my younger brother. Nothing subtle, nothing grounded in reality. Just a rewritten version of events where I existed purely as Blake's storage unit. I skimmed the pages, flipped to the signatures, and saw both Mark and Lisa had signed like this was some noble act of duty. Blake's name wasn't on anything. He wasn't dumb enough to put his own signature on a lie. He let them do the heavy lifting while he hid behind his usual victim routine. I didn't bother with shock. I didn't bother with anger. They'd tried guilt. They'd tried an ambush. And now they were trying a legal attack. They were just leveling up the same demand. I called Carter Nguyen, a lawyer one of my coworkers swore by. Guy was mid-30s, sharp voice, sharper eyes. After hearing the story, his first sentence was, "They're out of their minds, but paperwork makes idiots bold. Send me everything." So I did. Carter filed a response, and discovery began. Over the next few weeks, the back and forth warmed up. That's when things got entertaining. My parents had no proof of anything. Not one text, not one email, not one message showing any agreement whatsoever. Because there wasn't one. Their entire case sat on understood expectations, which isn't a legal argument. It's a family excuse. Carter told me, they're fishing for something that doesn't exist. Let them waste their energy. Meanwhile, the cousin leak kicked in. Riley sent me a folder of screenshots from the group chat my parents and Blake had used to orchestrate the ambush. They'd drafted talking points, listed which relatives should say what, and even practiced sympathy lines for Blake. The messages were time-stamped, clear and embarrassing. Then, Riley forwarded the messages Blake had sent privately to a couple cousins. "I'm calling dibs on Tyler's truck. He'll fold. Mom and Dad are going to make him do the right thing. He's got money. He doesn't need it. Hard evidence of entitlement. Hard evidence of planning. Hard evidence that the lawsuit wasn't about fairness. It was about Blake deciding he deserved something." Carter added it to the discovery packet with a smile that said, "This is over already." A few weeks later, after scheduling and document exchange, the deposition started. Blake went first. He arrived dressed like he was auditioning for a commercial about hardship. Oversized sweater, messy hair, dark circles he probably drew on himself. He sat down, sighed dramatically, and started every answer with, "I'm trying my best," or, "This has been so hard on me." When Carter asked him what evidence he had of the so-called family understanding, Blake blinked hard like he was queuing up tears. "It wasn't written," he whispered. "It was emotional. We all just knew." Carter didn't react. "So you have no documentation?" Blake let a tear fall. "Tyler's always been the strong one. I'm the sensitive one. Mom and Dad said they'd make things fair for me. He knows that." I sat across the table, watching the performance like a bad play. The tears slid down, but none hit his shirt. His breathing was offbeat, fake, practiced, predictable. Carter slid a printed screenshot across the table. "Is this your message?" Blake looked. The words were unmistakable. "I'm calling dibs on Tyler's truck." Blake froze, then stammered, "That was a joke." "Understood," Carter said. "And this one?" He slid the next. "Mom and Dad are going to make him do the right thing." Blake wiped a tear that didn't exist. "Context matters." Carter didn't let him finish. "And this? He'll fold." Even the court reporter stopped typing for half a second. Blake's act cracked. The tears stopped. His jaw tightened. That was the real Blake, entitled and cornered. Next came my parents' depositions. Mark tried authority first, talking like he was giving a motivational speech. He claimed family principles, unwritten rules, and Tyler's obligation as the older son. Carter let him talk until he ran out of breath, then asked, "Do you have any written evidence of this alleged agreement?" Mark stiffened. "It wasn't written. It was understood." Carter nodded slowly. "Understood by whom?" Mark's silence answered perfectly. Mom tried tears and guilt. She insisted Blake needed a fresh start, and that the truck represented balance in the family. She kept looking at me like I was betraying them by sitting still. Carter asked one simple question. "Did you or your husband ever give Tyler any money, loans, or promises regarding this truck?" "No," she whispered. "And did Tyler ever tell you he planned to give the truck to Blake?" "No," she whispered again. By the time my deposition came, their case had already collapsed. I answered Carter's questions plainly. When I bought the truck, how I paid for it, why I kept a second car, and what my parents had demanded. No theatrics, no emotion, No speeches, just facts. When it wrapped, Carter gathered the folders, looked at me and said, "They have nothing, and now we have everything." He was right. Their lawsuit wasn't a legal case. It was a tantrum with paperwork, and it wasn't going to save Blake from the one thing he'd never faced in his life: consequences. A few weeks after the depositions, the courthouse was packed tighter than it needed to be. Mark and Lisa sat on one side, stiff-backed and polished, like they were posing for a church directory photo. Blake sat between them, in the same helpless posture he'd used at the ambush. Shoulders slumped, hands folded, lips pressed in a permanent pout. He looked like a kid waiting for a lollipop, not a grown man in front of a judge. I sat with Carter and Nguyen, calm, ready, and bored. When the case was called, Blake launched straight into the performance. He talked about his hard year, his mental strain, his need for stability, and how the truck represented family support. He dropped lines he'd rehearsed, complete with slow pauses like he wanted the courtroom to admire the emotional spacing. My parents backed him up with wide eyes and innocent tones. Lisa dabbed her eyelids every few minutes, the tears barely there. Mark tried to play the reasonable father, talking about family expectations and promises understood between brothers. He didn't look at me once, not even when he explained my duty as the older son. Carter took his turn and dismantled the whole thing piece by piece. No agreement, no documentation, no messages showing any plan to give Blake a truck. Then he presented the screenshots, the group chat planning the ambush, the dibs statements, the guilt manipulation strategy. The judge read each page slowly, like he was waiting for someone to give him a reason not to laugh. Blake tried to interrupt twice. Both times the judge shut him down. When it was over, the judge leaned back and let the silence stretch. Then he delivered the ruling in clean, sharp sentences. Case dismissed with prejudice. Plaintiffs cover my costs and attorney's fees. No evidence of any agreement. Blake's face collapsed. Lisa gasped. Mark's jaw twitched like he was chewing nails. I thanked the judge, shook Carter's hand, and walked out of the courtroom feeling exactly how I expected to feel. Steady, not triumphant. The outcome had never been in doubt. I drove back to my duplex, parking the Silverado in its usual spot. I barely had time to shut the truck door before I heard footsteps behind me. Mark. He came across the driveway with the straight-line march he used to use when he was about to bark orders. No hello, no build-up. He stopped 3 feet away, eyes locked on the keys in my hand. You think this is over? He asked, voice low and shaking. That judge didn't fix anything. I didn't answer. I didn't move. He stepped closer, reaching for my pocket like he could just take the keys the way a parent snatches a toy from a toddler. His fingers brushed the edge of my jeans. I caught his wrist before he could close his hand. Try that again, and you will not like what you keep. And his eyes flicked up, confused for half a second. Then he pulled his hand back fast, like he'd touched a live wire. He stared at me, the realization settling in. Whatever version of me he thought he could intimidate didn't exist anymore. Lisa called his name from the street, voice shaky but trying to sound outraged. Blake was in the passenger seat of their car, watching from behind the window like a kid spying through curtains. Mark held my stare another second, then stepped back. You're a disappointment, he said. Get in line, I answered. He walked off, shaking his head like he'd been wronged. They drove away, Blake craning his neck to get a last look at the truck. I pocketed the keys and went inside. 3 days later, I was doing a routine check on the Silverado. Nothing unusual, just habit. When I crouched under the front end, I noticed something out of place. The wheel speed sensor lead in the front harness had been cut clean. Not frayed, not worn. Someone knew exactly what to slice to strand me later. It wouldn't have killed the truck instantly, but it would have stranded me somewhere inconvenient. Maybe the highway, maybe a job site hours from town. Definitely not an accident. I didn't swear. I didn't rant. I just took out my phone and took pictures from every angle. Then I pulled the footage from the cameras I'd installed before, replaying the last few nights frame by frame. Blake never appeared on camera. Neither did my parents. Whoever did it came up the narrow side yard path along the fence, the one angle my first setup did not cover. I had the front walk and the alley approach, but not that cut through by the trash cans. So I fixed that. I spent the evening redoing the entire setup. New mounts, higher angles, additional coverage over the whole driveway and both sides of the duplex. No gaps, no blind corners, no way to approach the truck without showing up on a lens. When I was done, I wiped my hands, locked the doors, and sat on the couch. I was waiting. Because the pattern was obvious. When Blake didn't get what he wanted, he escalated. When my parents didn't get what they wanted, they pushed harder. And nothing about the last week suggested they were done. The morning it happened, The air was cold enough to fog my breath as soon as I stepped outside. I locked the front door, coffee in one hand, work bag in the other. Same routine, same time, same quiet duplex driveway. Then I saw the Silverado. All four tires were flattened to the rims. Not deflated, slashed. Straight, deliberate cuts. Whoever did it used a sharp blade and confidence. I didn't walk closer right away. I stood still, taking in the angles of the cuts, the way the rubber peeled outward. No guessing needed. This wasn't random vandalism. It was a message. I turned around, went back inside, set the coffee down, and pulled up the upgraded camera feed. I fast-forwarded through the night until motion detection kicked in. There he was, Blake. Clear as daylight, hood off, face uncovered. He came in from the side yard path I had just covered, stepped into the driveway with a knife in his right hand, crouched, and slashed the front tire in one quick motion. No hesitation. Then the next. Then the next. He switched hands once, wiped the blade on his sleeve, and kept going. He wasn't rushing. He wasn't hiding. He wasn't even checking the surroundings. He did it like he believed the world was his, and I was still in the role they raised me for. He finished, looked at the truck like he'd accomplished something meaningful, and walked away without looking back. I saved the footage. Then I saved it again to an external drive. Then emailed a copy to myself. 3 versions. No chance of accidental deletion. I grabbed my keys for the beater sedan, backed out, and drove straight to the police station. Inside, I explained the situation to the desk officer. He asked for proof. I handed him the USB. He clicked play. Blake appeared on the screen, slashing tire after tire with the enthusiasm of someone cutting birthday cake. The officer's eyebrows went up. Well, that's clear. Crystal, I said. He called another officer over, who watched it once and nodded. Yeah, we'll open a case. Someone will reach out soon. The report was filed under vandalism and criminal mischief. I signed the papers, provided my contact information, and walked out. No emotion, no drama, just procedure. By the time I got home, Mark and Lisa's car was already parked crooked in the driveway, like they'd rushed over the second Blake realized the police had been notified. They were standing on my porch when I walked up. Lisa started first, voice overly bright. Tyler, honey, we heard something happened. We came to help. Mark nodded, trying a calm expression he didn't own. We want to make this right. Tires aren't cheap. Let us cover it. I walked past them and unlocked the door. Lisa stepped toward me. We can fix this as a family. Mark added, and Blake can take the truck on weekends, just until he gets settled. That way everyone wins. There it was. The trade, the strings attached, the fake peace offering that was really just another attempt to get what they'd wanted from the beginning. I turned to face them. You're not buying weekends with my property. That game is dead. Lisa's smile cracked instantly. Mark's face tightened. Before either of them could respond, Blake came around the corner of the house. He must have been listening the whole time. His expression flipped between shock and fury, realizing the plan had failed and I wasn't bending. You called the cops on me? He snapped. You slashed my tires, I said. What did you think was going to happen? He stepped forward, hands shaking. You're seriously doing this? Over a truck? Over my property being vandalized by a grown man who should know better. Lisa rushed to Blake's side like he'd been stabbed. He's upset. He wasn't thinking clearly. Mark jabbed a finger toward me. This doesn't have to go further. Withdraw the report. We'll handle it in the family. It's already filed, I said. And it's staying filed. Blake's jaw tightened. His eyes went sharp. The victim act collapsing. You're ruining my life. No, I said. You're ruining your own. He glared at me with a mix of humiliation and something close to panic. He wasn't used to consequences approaching from the front door. They didn't say goodbye when they left. They just got in the car, slammed the doors, and peeled out like teenagers caught shoplifting. An hour later, the call started. Blake first, crying, rambling, begging. Then yelling, insulting, threatening, then crying again. I didn't answer a single one. I let the voicemail fill up. When the last call came in, I picked up just long enough to deliver one line. You wanted my attention. Congratulations. You got the kind that comes with a case number. Then I hung up. On the drive back from the station, I called the shop that outfits our site trucks. They had a matching set in stock and held them for me. I swung by in the beater, loaded the rubber, and headed home. By evening, I had the tires replaced, one by one, with a torque wrench and a quiet mind. After that, I went inside and upgraded the cameras again. 2 more angles, tighter coverage, infrared, automatic backups to cloud and external. When the system rebooted, I scrolled through the settings, checked every feed, and clicked Save. Then I blocked all three numbers: Mark, Lisa, and Blake. Calls, texts, everything, gone. The next morning, I took the paperwork and filed for a no-contact order. Clean, simple, legal, final. By the time I returned home and stepped out into the driveway, the air was quiet. The Silverado sat on new tires. Cameras pointed from every angle, the morning damage replaced with clarity. I stood there for a moment, not to admire anything, but to acknowledge something simple. They didn't lose a truck fight. They lost the right to reach into my life ever again. And this time, they understood it. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks. Story 4. My wife believed her daughter's lies over my truth and kicked me out. 3 weeks later, she demanded an apology and compensation. I gave her divorce papers instead, and her daughter lost it. Hey Reddit, I never thought I'd be the guy posting here, but after everything that went down, I figured someone out there might need to hear this. It's a story about trust, lies, and what happens when the person you'd have done anything for decides you're the enemy. I'm not here for sympathy, just to share how I learned that sometimes the calmest revenge is walking away and never looking back. If you had asked me, Mike, 44 male, a year ago, who the most loyal person in my life was, I would have said my wife Eleanor without even thinking. We met when I was rebuilding my life, trying to get my business off the ground after a financial mess. When things got rough, she was the one who told me not to quit, who loaned me money from her savings without hesitation. I used to tell people I hit the jackpot marrying her. Then there was her daughter, 18 years old and living with us. I'll call her Maya. At first, I really tried. I took her out for dinner when she aced an exam, helped her get a part-time job, even taught her to drive. She'd smile and thank me, but there was always that distance. Like she was playing polite for her mom's sake. Sometimes I'd catch her staring at me with this blank look, and when I'd ask if something was wrong, she'd just shrug and say, "You're not my dad." I brushed it off. I figured it was normal for a young adult to feel weird about a stepdad stepping in, but she didn't come around. She grew colder, ruder. She'd roll her eyes when I talked, interrupt me mid-sentence, make small digs like, "Dad wouldn't have done it that way." And Eleanor, instead of calling her out, started defending her. "She's just stressed, Mike," she'd say. "Don't take it personally." Then came that night. It was a Thursday. I remember because I'd just come home from a long client meeting, and the house was unusually quiet. I walked in and found Eleanor sitting on the couch, her hands clenched, eyes glassy. Maya was standing near the wall, pretending to look scared, but with that same fake innocence I'd seen 100 times before. Eleanor looked up at me and said, "We need to talk." Her tone didn't sound like my wife's. It was flat, formal. My stomach dropped. "What's going on?" I asked. Maya started tearing up, voice trembling like she had rehearsed it. "I just can't live here anymore. He made me uncomfortable. What he did to me, it's not right." For a second, I actually thought I misheard her. "What?" I said quietly. Eleanor stood up. "Is that true, Mike?" I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so unreal. "Eleanor, are you serious right now? You think I—" Before I could even finish, she slapped me. Hard. My cheek burned. My ears rang. Her voice shook with rage. "How could you? How could you even think about doing that to my daughter?" I just stood there, staring at her, feeling everything inside me collapse. "I didn't do anything," I said quietly. "She's lying." But Eleanor wasn't hearing me. She stepped back, pointing toward the hallway. "Pack your things. You're leaving tonight." "Eleanor," I said, still holding my face. "I didn't touch her. I swear to you. She's trying to start something." She shook her head, eyes filled with disgust that didn't even look like hers anymore. "I don't want to hear it." Maya let out this shaky sob, like she was in a bad drama. Eleanor rushed to hug her, and I watched from across the room, frozen. The two of them stood there like I was some monster. "Please, Eleanor," I tried again, softer this time. "We've been together for years. You know me. You know me." But she didn't. Not in that moment. Her voice came out like ice. "You need to go before I call someone to make you leave." I stared at her for a long second, waiting for something to break. Some flicker of doubt. Some sign that she realized what she was doing. Nothing came. So I walked down the hall, pulled my suitcase from the closet, and started packing. My hands were shaking so bad I kept dropping things. I knew I had the right to stay, but I left to avoid giving them anything to twist. When I turned to leave, she was standing by the door, arms crossed, refusing to look at me. Maya stood a few feet behind her, still pretending to cry but with the faintest smirk on her face. That image stuck in my head, her fake tears, and that small, satisfied smile. I stepped outside, and before I could close the door, Eleanor said one last thing. Don't contact us again. The door slammed. The sound of it echoed all the way down the street as I stood there in the dark, suitcase by my feet, realizing my marriage, everything I thought was solid, had just ended in one lie. And as I walked away from that house, all I could think was, she didn't even ask. No questions. No hesitation. No, tell me your side. Just judgment. I kept walking until my legs burned, the cold night air drying the last bit of warmth I had left in me. I didn't even know where I was going, just anywhere that wasn't there. My hands were shaking as I pulled out my phone. I scrolled through my contacts until I landed on one name, Derek, my friend. I hadn't talked to him in a while, but I knew if there was one person I could count on, it was him. He picked up on the second ring. Mike? His voice was half asleep. Yeah, I said, my voice barely steady. I need a place to stay, just for a few days. He didn't ask why, didn't hesitate. Come over, doors open. That's all he said. Simple, solid. I showed up at his apartment about half an hour later, carrying my half-filled suitcase and whatever was left of my pride. When I walked in, he was sitting on the couch, no questions on his face, just quiet concern. He pointed to the couch. Sit, you look like hell. I dropped the suitcase and sat down. For a moment, I couldn't speak. Everything in my head was tangled. I didn't even know how to start. Finally, I said, Eleanor kicked me out. Derek frowned. Why? You two fight? She thinks I did something to her daughter. The words felt poisonous just saying them out loud. He stared at me for a second, trying to process it. What? She said I made her uncomfortable. Said I did something. Inappropriate. I shook my head, staring at the floor. I didn't. You know, I wouldn't. The silence stretched for a second, and I could feel my chest tightening. I was waiting for it. The doubt. The look people get when they think they're hiding judgment. But you can see it anyway. I started panicking. But Derek just sighed and leaned back. Mike, stop shaking. I believe you. I looked up at him, almost not believing what I'd heard. You don't even need to think about it? He nodded. I've known you since high school. You're a lot of things. Stubborn, quiet, sometimes too patient for your own good. But not that. Not ever. Something in me cracked right then. I hadn't realized how desperate I was to hear those words until they came out of his mouth. I nodded, staring at the floor, swallowing the lump in my throat. He got up and went to the kitchen. Couch is yours. Sheets are clean. You can stay as long as you need. That night, I barely slept. My head kept looping the same thought. She didn't even ask. The next morning, I woke up early, staring at the ceiling. I checked my phone out of habit. One message from Eleanor. Just 4 words. You're a monster. That hit harder than the slap. I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. By noon, Derek was already up for work. But before leaving, he put a sticky note on the counter. Don't sit in this forever. Fix it. That's when I decided I needed to know what I was really dealing with. Not emotionally, but legally. If Eleanor was serious about cutting me out, I needed to protect myself. I found a small law office nearby and made an appointment. The lawyer, a middle-aged guy named Nate, listened while I explained everything. The accusation, the eviction, the silence. He didn't flinch. When I finished, he opened a file and asked, Do you know whose name is on the house deed? Both, I said. We bought it together. He nodded. And the business? The one you registered under her name? Half of it's mine, I said quickly. I helped her start it. He tapped his pen thoughtfully. Do you have proof of any of that? I kept receipts, bank transfers, emails. He looked up. Good. Keep them safe. You have rights here, Mike. You're not walking away empty-handed. Something about that sentence made me breathe for the first time in days. For a while, I'd been walking around like I'd lost everything. My home, my wife, my reputation. But now, for the first time, I felt a flicker of control. When I got back, Derek was sitting on the balcony with coffee. He looked at me, searching my face. You okay? I went to see a lawyer, I said. Turns out, she can't just erase me. I still have rights to the house and the business. He nodded slowly. Good. You needed to hear that. I sat beside him, staring out at the street. She told me not to contact her, I said quietly. And now she's telling people I'm a threat. Let her talk, Derek said. Truth has legs. Lies don't. I didn't answer, but for the first time in days, I actually believed that. That night, I stayed up again, but not from fear, from thought. I opened my laptop, started sorting through folders, finding every proof, every receipt, every record that tied me to what we built. It wasn't revenge. Not yet. It was a plan. Because if she wasn't going to give me a chance to defend myself, I'd make sure she'd regret not letting me speak. The next few days were quiet. Too quiet. Derek went to work early, and I spent my time cleaning up my side of things, sorting through documents, printing out records, and checking bank statements. Every time I looked at my phone, I half expected a text from her saying she wanted to talk, but the screen stayed empty. Then, one afternoon, Derek walked into the living room, holding his phone. "You should see this," he said carefully. He handed it to me, and there it was. A post from Maya, my stepdaughter. A picture of her smiling at a cafe, captioned, "Finally safe from my stepdad." Some men hide their true colors well. No names, no tags, but everyone in our town would know exactly who she meant. I stared at it for a long time. My first instinct was to comment, to shout the truth into the void, but Derek stopped me. "Don't," he said. "You reply once, and you look guilty. Let your lawyer handle it." He was right. I called my lawyer, explained everything, and by the end of the day, a cease and desist letter was sent directly to Eleanor's email. The post vanished within 24 hours. But it didn't matter. The damage was already done. My phone started buzzing with texts from people I hadn't talked to in months. Some were polite, pretending they were just checking in. Others went straight to it, asking if I had done something inappropriate. I could feel the judgment hiding between every word. The next morning, I went out to grab coffee. The barista, someone who used to chat with me every morning, barely made eye contact. Two regulars at the corner table stopped talking when I walked by. That silent, heavy kind of attention followed me everywhere. By the end of the week, I had to delete my social media altogether. I couldn't look at the whispers anymore. Every time I opened a feed, I saw people liking Maya's photos or leaving little comments like, "Proud of you for speaking out." It was like being erased while still existing. A few nights later, Derek came home to find me sitting on the couch staring at nothing. "You're not going to win this online," he said quietly. "I'm not trying to," I answered. "But she's winning out there." He sat down across from me. "Then win where it actually matters." I nodded, and that's when I decided I was done waiting. I met my lawyer again the next morning. We talked about filing for divorce formally, but he said something that stuck with me. "Don't rush it emotionally. Build your foundation first, then act." So I waited. I documented every message, every deleted post, every screenshot I could find. I kept my hands clean, my responses legal, my tone cold. And then, about 2 weeks later, Eleanor showed up. It was a Saturday. There was a hard knock on the door. Not polite, more like someone trying to prove they still had control. When I opened it, Eleanor was standing there, arms crossed, jaw tight. She didn't look calm. She looked like she'd practiced this visit in her head 100 times. "Are you really not going to fix what you did?" she said. No greeting, no hesitation. Before I even answer, she walked in on her own, eyes darting around the small apartment like she was trying to remind herself she was the victim walking into the criminal space. She didn't sit right away. She just stood there, clutching her purse like a shield. "You've been ignoring me," she said sharply. "After everything you did, you could at least have the decency to face it." "I've had nothing to say," I answered, keeping my voice even. That stopped her for a second. She looked at me like I'd just insulted her existence, then straightened her shoulders, ready to start the real performance. She folded her hands. "Look, Mike, we can put this behind us. I've had time to think, and I'm willing to reconsider everything. But there has to be accountability." "Accountability?" I repeated. She nodded, like she was explaining something obvious. "Yes, for what you did. I think it would help Maya heal if you apologized, and maybe provided some compensation for the emotional distress you caused her." For a second, I just stared at her, trying to process the words. She was sitting there, calm as ever, talking about compensation, like she was negotiating a refund. I didn't answer. She took my silence as defiance. Her eyes narrowed. "You can't just walk away from this, Mike. You can't pretend you didn't cause pain. You think running from it makes you innocent?" That was it. The mask slipped. The gentle tone was gone. Her voice rose, sharp and brittle. "You're manipulative, you know that? You're hiding like a coward." I waited for her to finish. When she finally stopped, breathing hard, I stood up, walked to the table, and picked up a sealed envelope I'd prepared days ago. I walked back to her and placed it on the coffee table. "What's this?" she asked. "Divorce papers," I said. The color drained from her face. "You're serious?" "Dead serious." Her calm broke completely. "You're trying to destroy everything. You're going to ruin us both." I looked at her, steady. "You did that the night you believed a lie over me." For a moment, she just stood there, frozen. Then she grabbed her purse, muttered something under her breath, and stormed out. The door slammed so hard it rattled the frame. I stood in silence for a long time after that. For once, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel broken. I felt steady. That was the moment I realized something had shifted. I wasn't begging for her to believe me anymore. I wasn't waiting for her to come to her senses. She'd made her choice. And now I was finally making mine. The next morning, I called my lawyer and told him to go ahead. File the divorce officially. No more half measures, no symbolic envelopes, no waiting around for her to come to her senses. I wanted it done legally and cleanly. He scheduled a meeting for the afternoon, and I showed up with a backpack full of proof, receipts, old invoices, business transfers, everything that tied my name to hers on paper. When I laid it all out on the table, the lawyer gave a small nod. You've got more documentation than most people bring in a year. This will hold. I watched as he organized it into neat piles, labeling each one. The business, he said, tapping a folder, is a 50-50 split. You funded her, worked in it, and your name's on the accounts. She can't deny that. It wasn't satisfying yet, but it was something. I left that office knowing I had a plan. Something solid that wasn't built on begging or emotion. By the end of the week, Eleanor was officially served. The papers went out, and for the first time, the silence broke. My phone lit up with messages, one after another. How could you do this to me? You're ruining my life. We can still fix this if you stop now. I didn't reply. Not a single word. She must have realized I wasn't biting because the messages turned uglier. You'll regret this. You think anyone will believe your side? Still nothing from me. 3 days later, she called 11 times in one afternoon. I let it ring every time. That's when I heard it. A sharp knock on the door. I didn't even have to look. I knew it was her. When I opened it, she was standing there in full performance mode. Red eyes, trembling lip, one hand on her chest like she was auditioning for pity. You're destroying everything, she said the moment I appeared. We built a life together, Mike. You can't just throw it away because you're angry. I'm not angry, I said flatly. I'm done. She stepped closer, her voice dropping lower. Then stop the divorce. Please. Think about what we had. Think about the house, the business. About me. Her tone softened just enough to sound desperate, but I could see the gears turning behind her eyes. This wasn't love. It was damage control. You made your decision the night you threw me out, I said quietly. You didn't ask questions then. Don't ask now. She stared at me for a second, disbelief flickering across her face. And then, just like that, the fake calm shattered. You're doing this to punish me, she shouted. You're ruining my daughter's life, mine too. You think this makes you innocent? I didn't move. You ruined your own life, Eleanor. Her breathing got shallow, eyes wild. Then she screamed, sharp and sudden. You hit me! The words sliced through the room like glass. For a split second, I just stood there, stunned. My hands were at my sides. I hadn't even taken a step toward her. She screamed again, louder, like she wanted the neighbors to hear. You hit me! And that's when I heard a door open behind me. Derek stepped out of his room, eyes focused. He froze for only a second before saying, calm and steady, no, he didn't. I saw everything. You're lying. Eleanor's face drained of color instantly. She hadn't known Derek was home. The room went quiet, except for her breathing. You need to leave, Derek said firmly. Now. She looked between us. Me standing still. Derek glaring. And for the first time since this all started, she didn't have a script. Her lips trembled, then twisted into something bitter. You'll regret this, she hissed, voice shaking. I didn't reply. She stormed out, slamming the door so hard the frame rattled. The silence after was thick. Derek rubbed his face and sighed. She's losing control, man. Don't be alone with her again. That was stupid from your side. I won't, I said quietly. I grabbed my phone, opened the recorder app, and dictated everything that had just happened. Time, date, exact words. Then I sent it straight to my lawyer with a short note. She tried to accuse me of hitting her. Derek witnessed it. The reply came within minutes. Good move. Keep documenting everything. Don't open that door again without me or the police on standby. The next day, I met with the lawyer again. He added Derek's statement to my case file. He looked up from the notes and said, She's trying to bait you. Don't give her anything. Let her dig her own hole. So that's what I did. By the end of the month, my lawyer called. Everything's filed and accepted. The court date is confirmed. My lawyer said the county court moved fast on uncontested property cases. No kids involved, no ongoing disputes. He also negotiated a partial settlement with her side before the hearing, so the judge agreed to an expedited schedule. That night, I sat at my desk, the apartment silent except for the hum of the ceiling fan. I looked at the neatly stacked folders in front of me. A month of effort, Every document sharp and ready. My phone buzzed. A text from my lawyer. Court date, 14th. Be ready. I stared at the message, then typed back one line. I've been ready since the night she lied. Then I leaned back in my chair, exhaled slowly, and whispered to myself, let's see who still lies when it's under oath. 2 weeks later, that day came. The courthouse looked smaller than I remembered from pictures. I sat with my lawyer at the front bench, files stacked neatly between us. Across the aisle, Eleanor walked in. She looked like she was walking onto a stage. She didn't even look at me. She just walked straight to her seat, pretending I didn't exist. Behind her sat Maya, arms folded tight across her chest, glare sharp enough to cut glass. My lawyer leaned closer. Stay calm. Let the documents do the talking. But I nodded once. I didn't plan on saying much anyway. My lawyer had already filed a motion about her earlier misconduct. She'd submitted a sworn declaration full of false statements and ignored discovery deadlines. The judge had warned her once about wasting the court's time. The judge entered, a firm voice calling for everyone to rise. The proceedings started fast. My lawyer opened with a short statement, outlining the marriage, the joint business, and the contributions I'd made. He placed a folder on the desk and said, Your Honor, this file contains direct evidence of Mr. Jefferson's involvement in all financial and operational aspects of the business. He opened it like he'd been rehearsing for weeks. Inside were receipts, bank statements, signed transfers, all bearing both our names. When the judge turned to Eleanor, asking if she had any objections, she smiled faintly, confident at first. That business was mine. He just helped here and there, she said. Helped? My lawyer asked. You mean the funding, contracts, web management, and rent payments he covered from his personal account? She hesitated. That was temporary support. Temporary, my lawyer repeated, holding up another page. This transfer here, a $10,000 investment marked as capital contribution, signed by you. The judge raised an eyebrow. Mrs. Jefferson, that doesn't sound temporary. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. For the first time since I walked in, I saw her mask shift. We moved to the next part, the home and assets. My lawyer presented the mortgage statements, showing both signatures. Every time Eleanor tried to interrupt, the judge stopped her. Mrs. Jefferson, the judge said sharply at one point, if you can't provide evidence to the contrary, let's proceed with what's documented. Her fake confidence began to crumble. Her hand trembled when she reached for her water. At one point, she muttered, He's doing this out of revenge. The judge replied calmly, I don't see revenge here. I see paperwork. Behind her, I could see Maya glaring, whispering things into her mother's ear every few minutes. She looked furious, restless, like she was waiting for a chance to lash out. When my lawyer presented the emails, exchanges between me and Eleanor discussing her business plans, she tried to play dumb. I don't recall writing those. My lawyer printed one enlarged copy and read it aloud. Quote, You've done so much for this business, Mike. I couldn't have started without you. That's your email address, Mrs. Jefferson? She froze. Yes, but that was before he turned on me. The judge didn't even respond. He just made a note. By the time the evidence list ended, the courtroom felt colder. My lawyer leaned back, confident, while Eleanor kept her eyes on the desk, pretending to flip through papers that didn't matter anymore. Then the judge asked one final question. Mrs. Jefferson, did you or did you not remove your husband from the marital home without any proof of wrongdoing? Her voice cracked. I had to protect my daughter. From what? The judge asked. You admitted under oath there was no police report, no investigation, and no witnesses. Correct? Eleanor's lips parted, but no sound came out. The silence said enough. We'll take a short recess before I issue my preliminary ruling. The judge stepped out, saying he'd take it under advisement and set a date for the following week. When he left, the room went quiet, except for the sound of Maya's whispering. Fast. Panicked. Eleanor rubbed her temples, shaking her head. For once, she didn't look angry. She looked small. I stood up and walked out into the hallway, feeling every ounce of tension drain out of me. It wasn't victory yet, but it was close enough to taste. I was standing by the stairs when I heard quick footsteps behind me. Maya's voice cut through the air like nails on glass. You think you've won? I turned slowly. She was glaring at me, shaking with anger. You're pathetic, she spat. You ruined everything. You took everything from her. I didn't move. I didn't even flinch. She took a step closer. You're greedy. You never loved her. You just wanted the money. I looked at her for a long moment before answering, calm and steady. Funny. I'm not the one who lied to ruin a marriage. That shut her up. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. The confidence that always filled her eyes flickered for the first time. She turned sharply and walked away, her heels clacking down the steps until the sound faded. I stood there, breathing slow. My lawyer walked out a few minutes later, phone in hand. Judge will finalize next week, he said. Looks good for you. You handled that perfectly. I nodded. I didn't have to handle anything. The truth handled itself. As we walked down the courthouse steps, I saw Eleanor through the glass door, still sitting there, shoulders slumped, face pale. For years, I thought silence was weakness, that staying calm meant losing. But standing there that day, I realized something different. Silence wasn't surrender. It was control. And for the first time since the night she threw me out, I finally had all of it. The following week felt strangely calm. My lawyer told me the judge's final ruling would be delivered soon, but I already knew which way it was going. The evidence was overwhelming. The silence from Eleanor's side was even louder. Then the fallout started. It began small, like cracks in a wall. A friend from our old neighborhood messaged me saying, "People are asking questions about her posts." Someone mentioned, "There's no proof of anything." I didn't respond, but I saved the message. A few days later, screenshots from Maya's old posts started circulating again, the ones she thought she'd deleted months ago. Someone found them through archived pages, reposting them in community groups with questions like, "Didn't this girl accuse her stepdad? Why's the court saying something else?" The narrative flipped almost overnight. The same people who used to avoid me were suddenly silent. Some even reached out privately with awkward apologies. Then came the real explosion. Apparently, one of Maya's friends, someone she'd bragged to, leaked a series of messages. In them, Maya admitted that she might have exaggerated things about me because she couldn't stand how much control Mike had in the house. The screenshots spread fast. Every word was time-stamped. Every excuse was gone. My lawyer called me that morning. "Don't comment publicly," he said. "Let the truth breathe on its own. I didn't plan to." Watching it happen was enough. Eleanor's business took the first hit. Clients started pulling out of contracts, citing personal reputation concerns. By the end of the week, her company's social media page was flooded with questions. Not hateful ones, just cold curiosity. "Did you really lie about your husband?" She tried posting a vague statement about misunderstandings, but it only made things worse. People had already seen the leaked messages. There was no coming back from that. One evening, Derek and I were eating dinner when a mutual acquaintance sent me a video clip. It showed Eleanor and Maya leaving a small cafe. Mid-argument, Eleanor's voice carried loud and clear. "You ruined everything! You and your mouth." Maya fired back, "You believed me. You didn't even ask him what happened." The video ended with Eleanor shouting, "Because you cried." I just put the phone down. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like justice finally caught up to them. By the time we reached the final property hearing, part of the expedited process, things were already over in every way that mattered. Eleanor walked in looking smaller, drained. She didn't even look at me. Maya sat behind her again, but she wasn't glaring anymore. She looked restless, like she didn't want to be there. The judge went over everything in a steady voice. The financial records, the verified evidence, the lack of proof for any of her accusations, and my verified role as co-owner of the business. Therefore, the judge said, the court finds that the business constitutes marital property and awards Mr. Jefferson 50% of its total value, including related assets. Additionally, Mrs. Jefferson is ordered to cover Mr. Jefferson's legal fees due to her prior false declaration and failure to comply with discovery requests. Eleanor's shoulders slumped. Maya's face went pale. I didn't celebrate. I didn't even look their way. I just nodded at my lawyer and started gathering my papers. Behind me, I could hear Maya whispering something sharp, and then the sound of her chair scraping as she stood up and stormed out of the courtroom. The door slammed hard enough to make the judge sigh. Eleanor stayed seated, frozen, staring down at the documents in front of her. For a moment, I thought she might speak. She didn't. She just stared. Maybe at the numbers. Maybe at herself. A few weeks later, word got around that the house was listed for sale under the court's order. The judge ruled that selling it was the only fair way to divide the value evenly. Eleanor had no choice but to comply. The business she'd fought so hard to claim alone was split down the middle. Half its profits and assets transferred to me through the court's enforcement. Not long after, Maya moved out. Apparently, they'd had another major fight. This time about money. A friend of a friend told me Eleanor screamed that Maya had ruined her entire life. And Maya yelled back that Eleanor should have known better than to believe everything. That was the last I heard about them for a while. Meanwhile, my name was cleared everywhere that mattered. The court's ruling was public record. The local network that had quietly spread rumors now had written proof of my innocence. I started getting messages from old clients again. Short, respectful ones. Glad things got sorted, Mike. Knew you weren't that kind of guy. I didn't reply to most of them. I didn't need their approval anymore. By the end of that month, the money from the settlement hit my account. That was the business split and the fee award. The house proceeds would come later, once the sale closed. Eleanor had her reputation ruined, her business fractured, her daughter gone, all because she didn't ask for my side. No revenge post, no speech, just silence. Months passed, and the noise faded with time. The messages stopped, the whispers disappeared. The lawyers closed their files. It was strange how quickly chaos could turn into quiet once the truth settled. Life became quiet enough to think again, and for once the thoughts weren't heavy. They were still, steady, the kind that come from peace, not pain. Then, one evening, there was a knock on the door. It wasn't aggressive, not the kind that made you tense, just soft, hesitant. I almost didn't answer, but something in the rhythm made me stand. When I opened it, Eleanor was standing there. For a moment, I didn't recognize her. Her hair was shorter, duller. The woman who used to wear sharp heels and confidence now stood in worn flats and tired eyes. Her shoulders drooped like the weight of everything she'd built was finally crushing her. "Hi," she said quietly. I didn't move. I just held the door open halfway. "You shouldn't be here," I said flatly. "I know," she replied. "I just needed to see you." Her voice cracked on the last word. "I'm not here for money," she said quickly. "Or property. I don't want anything from you." I waited. She looked down, twisting her fingers together. "I just came to ask for your forgiveness." The words hung in the air, heavy and strange. I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because of how absurd it felt to hear that word from her after everything. Forgiveness. She kept talking. "I know you have no reason to. I know what I did was—" Her voice cracked again. "Unforgivable. But I can't live with the thought that you hate me. I just want peace, Mike. Please." Her eyes filled with tears. She took a step closer, but I didn't move back or forward. I just stood still, watching her, remembering that night she didn't even let me speak. The slap, the accusation, the way she looked at me like I was filth. When she finally stopped talking, I spoke quietly, my voice steady. "Why would I give you another chance through forgiveness?" I said, "when you never gave me one to explain myself." She stared at me, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I was scared," she whispered. "I thought I was protecting her." "Protecting her from what?" I asked. "The man who sheltered her? The man who fixed her car, her laptop, her life?" She shook her head, crying harder now. I didn't know what to believe. You didn't care what was true," I interrupted. She covered her face with her hands, shoulders shaking. "I've lost everything, Mike. My daughter won't talk to me. The house is gone. The business is falling apart. I just want to make peace with you." I let out a slow breath. "Peace starts with truth, not guilt." She looked up, eyes red, breathing uneven. "Then tell me what to do." I shook my head. "You already did everything. That's the problem." We stood there in silence. The hallway light flickered once, and for a moment it felt like time froze. Finally, I said, "You should go." She opened her mouth to speak, but didn't. She just nodded, wiped her tears with the back of her hand, and turned toward the elevator. When the doors closed behind her, I stood there for a few seconds longer before closing the door. Slowly, without anger, just finality. She lost her house, her business, her daughter's respect. I lost none of that. I lost illusions. And that I could live without. That night, I opened a small box I'd kept tucked away in the back of the closet. The last traces of that old life. The wedding ring. A few old pictures. The house keys. I drove out to the river, parked near the edge, and stood there for a while under the cold night air. I opened the box, looked at everything one last time, and without hesitation, threw it all into the water. The splash was quiet, barely there, but it sounded final. The ring sank first, then the pictures drifted apart, the keys disappearing beneath the ripples. I watched until the surface went still again. When I got back home, I locked the door, turned off the lights, and sat in silence. For the first time in years, I felt completely free. No ghosts, no noise, no weight, just peace. And I realized that real revenge isn't about making someone else suffer. It's about making sure they never have power over you again. And I had finally done that. YouTube just dropped this new hype feature. If you're hooked on this story, smash that hype button. It tells YouTube this video deserves to blow up, and it keeps even crazier stories coming your way. Story 5. My family cut me off for going to trade school. Now they're begging me to fix their houses for free. Hey Reddit, I never thought I'd be writing one of these posts, but here we are. This story has been eating at me for months now, and I need to get it off my chest. I'm 28, male, and apparently the biggest disappointment my family ever produced. At least that's what they told me for years. Turns out, I might have been the smartest one after all. Let me start from the beginning so you understand the full picture of how messed up my family dynamics were, and how satisfying it was when everything finally came full circle. Growing up, my older brother Marcus, 31, was basically treated like the second coming of Christ in our household. Perfect grades, student council president, academic scholarships, the whole 9 yards. Meanwhile, I was the kid who preferred working with my hands over hitting the books. Don't get me wrong, I wasn't stupid. I just learned better by doing things rather than reading about them. My parents, both college-educated professionals, had this vision of their sons following in their footsteps. Mom's a nurse practitioner, dad's an accountant. They met in college, got their degrees, bought the house in the suburbs, had the careers. The American dream, right? In their minds, college was the only path to success, and anything else was just settling for less. I'll never forget the day in my junior year of high school when I told them I wanted to take shop class instead of AP chemistry. You would have thought I'd announced I was dropping out to become a drug dealer. Shop class? Mom said, looking at me like I'd grown a second head. Why would you want to waste time playing with tools when you could be preparing for college? Dad jumped in immediately. Son, you need to think about your future. College is the only way to make something of yourself these days. You don't want to end up like those guys working construction, breaking their backs for minimum wage. Marcus, who was home from his first year at State University, just smirked from across the dinner table. Come on, little brother. You're smarter than that. Don't you want to have a career you can be proud of? I tried to explain that I actually enjoyed working with my hands, that I was good at building things, fixing things, but they weren't hearing it. To them, manual labor was what people did when they couldn't cut it in the real world. So I took AP chemistry to keep the peace. Got a C- and hated every minute of it. Things came to a head during my senior year when it was time to apply for colleges. I had decent grades, not Marcus level but solid B's mostly. I could have gotten into a state school, probably even gotten some financial aid. But I kept thinking about my friend Jake's older brother, who'd gone to trade school for welding and was making $75,000 a year at 22, working on industrial projects and loving what he did. Meanwhile, Marcus was struggling through his engineering program, stressed out of his mind, calling home every week complaining about how hard his classes were, how much debt he was racking up, how he wasn't sure he even liked engineering, but felt trapped because he'd already invested so much time and money. That's when I made the decision that would change everything. I applied to the local community college's welding program. 2-year certification, hands-on training, job placement assistance, and I could do it for a fraction of the cost of a 4-year degree. It seemed like a no-brainer to me. When I told my parents at dinner, the reaction was explosive. Absolutely not, Dad said immediately. I'm not paying for you to learn to be a welder. That's not a career. That's a job. There's a difference, Mom added. A career is something you build on, something with growth potential. Welding is just manual labor. Marcus, who was home for spring break and still complaining about his classes, actually laughed. Dude, welding? Seriously? You want to spend your life in some dirty shop, breathing in fumes, when you could have a real profession? It is a real profession, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. Good welders make excellent money. Industrial welders can make 6 figures. There's always going to be demand for— Oh, please, Mom interrupted. Those are rare exceptions. Most welders are barely getting by. Look, if money is tight, we can figure out student loans for you to go to state like Marcus. It's an investment in your future. That's when Dad dropped the ultimatum that changed everything. Here's the deal, son. If you want to throw your life away learning to be a welder, that's your choice. But don't expect us to pay for it. And don't expect us to pretend we're proud of you for settling for less than your potential. The room went dead silent. Even Marcus looked uncomfortable. So if I go to trade school, I said slowly, you won't support me? Why would we support you making a bad decision? Dad replied. Sometimes tough love is what it takes. You'll thank us later when you realize we were right, and you decide to get a real education. I looked around the table at my family. Mom was nodding along with Dad. Marcus was staring at his plate, not meeting my eyes. None of them believed in me. None of them thought I could make something of myself doing what I actually wanted to do. Fine, I said, standing up from the table. I'll do it myself. And I did. I moved out a week after graduation, found a crappy studio apartment across town, got a warehouse job, and enrolled in welding school using my grandparents' graduation money and a small community college loan I qualified for myself. The first months were brutal, working 30 hours weekly, school full-time, learning completely new skills. My hands were constantly cut up, I was exhausted, living on ramen and peanut butter sandwiches. But I loved it. For the first time, I was learning something that made sense. The instructors were industry veterans who taught not just welding, but business fundamentals, bidding jobs, working with employers, starting your own company someday. Meanwhile, my family wrote me off. Mom called occasionally. It's not too late to change your mind. You could still apply for spring semester at state. Dad wouldn't talk to me. Marcus texted condescending messages like, "How's the blue-collar life treating you?" I stopped responding. The turning point came second semester when instructor Jerry Martinez pulled me aside. "You've got real talent. But more than that, you understand the business side. You're not just learning a trade, you're building a career." Jerry had run his own fabrication business for 15 years. He offered me part-time work at his shop with better pay than the warehouse and real-world experience. "Start thinking beyond welding," he advised. "Learn fabrication, basic electrical, take business classes. Successful contractors aren't just welders, they're problem solvers." I took evening business classes during my second year, learning contracts, insurance, pricing strategies. I started taking side jobs, neighbors' repairs, custom pieces, car welding, small money, but building reputation. By graduation, I had certification, 2 years experience, satisfied customers, and a plan. Jerry was retiring and offered to sell me his equipment and customer list for $45,000, professional gear, and 15 years of business relationships. With my $15,000 savings and a small business loan, I became a business owner at 20. Marcus had just graduated state with his engineering degree and $80,000 in loans. He struggled finding work, eventually taking a manufacturing job paying $42,000, barely more than I made part-time welding in school. When I called home about buying Jerry's business, Mom said, "That's nice, honey, but it's still not too late for real school. You could get your degree and have a real career." I hung up and didn't call back for 6 months. The first year was a grind, but my grind. I worked 60-hour weeks, took unwanted jobs, never refused learning opportunities. I specialized in custom fabrication and repairs, jobs requiring creativity and problem solving. My reputation grew through delivering more than expected and solving problems others couldn't. By year 2, I was booked solid. Year 3, 4 employees and a real shop. I got electrical certification, added plumbing basics, offered complete fabrication services. We became the guys you called for unsolvable problems. By 24, I was clearing $150,000 profit yearly, owned a house and new truck, with money banked and industry respect. Marcus bounced between engineering jobs, lived with roommates, made loan payments that never seemed to shrink, constantly complaining his degree hadn't prepared him for reality. My parents still acted like Marcus was the success story, and I'd settled for less. The first crack in my family's delusion came 5 years into running my business. I was 25, and we just landed our biggest contract yet, $300,000 to fabricate custom architectural metalwork for a downtown office building. Marcus had just been laid off from his third engineering job, company downsizing. He was panicking about student loan payments and rent. He called me for the first time in over a year. "Hey, little brother, how's the welding thing going?" he said, trying to sound casual. "It's going well," I said carefully. I'd learned not to share much with family. They always found ways to minimize my success. "That's cool. Listen, I'm between jobs right now. I was thinking maybe I could help out, temporarily, just until I find another engineering position." This was the same brother who'd called welding not a real profession for years. Now he wanted a job. "What kind of help?" I asked. "Well, I've got an engineering degree. I could help with the technical side, maybe help you bid bigger projects, bring some professional expertise to the operation." Even asking for help, he couldn't resist implying my business lacked professional expertise. "Marcus, do you have experience with welding, fabrication, construction project management?" "Well, no, but engineering principles are engineering principles. I could learn the specifics quickly." "And you'd want an engineering salary?" "I've got loans to pay. I was making $55,000 at my last job, so something in that range would be helpful. 55,000 plus benefits for someone with no industry experience who'd need months of training before contributing anything meaningful." "I'll think about it," I said. I didn't call back. 2 weeks later, Mom called. "We need to talk about Marcus. Family is supposed to help family." I considered his request. "It's just not a good fit. Because you're jealous of his education, his potential. You've always resented that Marcus was the smart one, and now you're getting revenge." Even with Marcus unemployed and me running a successful business, she still thought he was the smart one. Mom, his degree doesn't teach him to read architectural plans, manage construction schedules, or operate fabrication equipment. Those skills take years to develop. So teach him. That's what family does. Would Marcus have hired me at his engineering jobs? That's different. How? She couldn't answer. The real turning point came when I was 26. I'd bought a larger shop, hired my 8th employee, and was doing over $2 million in revenue annually. Marcus had found a new job but taken a step backward, $38,000 at a small firm. Still living with roommates, still drowning in debt. Meanwhile, my parents' house was falling apart. They'd bought it in 1995, and by 2019, it was showing its age badly. Rotting deck, leaking roof, outdated electrical, constant plumbing backups. Dad called on a Saturday morning, first time in over 2 years. Son, we've got a situation. The deck finally collapsed. Your mother almost fell through yesterday. We need it fixed, but the quotes are astronomical. How astronomical? Lowest bid is $8,000 just for the deck. One guy said $15,000 for everything. After years of dismissing my career as not real work, now they wanted to benefit from it. We know you do this kind of work now. We were hoping you could help us out. Family rates, you know? I drove over the next day. I hadn't been there in almost a year and was shocked. The deck wasn't just rotting. It was a legitimate safety hazard with completely failed support beams. Walking around, I spotted a dozen major issues. Missing roof shingles, water damage, ancient electrical panel, cracked driveway destroying their cars. How long has it been like this? I asked. Oh, you know, old houses. Always something needing attention. Dad, this isn't something. This is thousands in deferred maintenance. The electrical panel needs complete replacement before you have a house fire. I spent an hour doing a comprehensive assessment. Immediate safety issues, deck, electrical, emergency roof repairs, would run $25,000. Full renovation, $80,000. I priced everything exactly as I would for any customer, actually more thoroughly, because I knew the problems and wanted everything done right. Dad called an hour after receiving my $24,500 bid. This has got to be a mistake. These prices are more than the other guys quoted. Dad, this includes work they didn't even mention. They quoted just deck replacement. This includes bringing your electrical to code and using materials that actually last. But you're family. We thought you'd give us a deal. Dad, this is my business. These prices reflect actual costs. People help their families. Like how you helped when I was starting my business? Silence. I'll give you the same family rates I give all my family, I said finally. Great. What's the discount? There is no discount, Dad. My family rates equal my regular rates, because my family never supported my business. That afternoon, I drove over to my neighbor Bill's house. Bill was a retired teacher who lived 2 doors down from me. 6 months earlier, he'd asked me to build a custom ramp for his wife, who was in a wheelchair. It was a small job, maybe $800 in materials and a day's work. But Bill was on a fixed income and worried about the cost. I'd done the job for free, not because he was family, but because he was a good neighbor who'd always been kind to me, and because his wife needed the ramp to safely access their home. When Bill tried to pay me, I'd told him the only payment I wanted was for him to pass on the favor someday when he could help someone else. That's what family actually looks like. It's not about blood relations or sharing a last name. It's about people who support each other, who believe in each other, who are there when it matters. Over the years, I'd built a real family. Jerry, who'd mentored me and given me the chance to buy his business. My employees who'd grown with the company and trusted me to make decisions that kept us all working. My customers, who'd referred friends and family because they trusted the quality of our work. My neighbors, who'd become genuine friends. These people had supported me when my actual family wouldn't. They'd celebrated my successes and helped me through challenges. Bill wasn't the only neighbor I'd helped over the years. Mrs. Chen across the street had needed her front gate repaired after a storm. I'd done it for the cost of materials. The young couple next to her had wanted a custom fire pit for their backyard. I'd built it at cost as a wedding present. These weren't business decisions. They were family decisions. Dad called back 3 days later. We've decided to go with another contractor, he said. We found someone who can do the deck for $6,000. That's great, I said. I hope it works out. You don't sound like you think it will. I didn't, actually. A $6,000 deck job meant either substandard materials, corners being cut on the foundation work, or both, but it wasn't my problem anymore. I hope I'm wrong, I said. 2 months later, Marcus called me. Dude, you need to see Mom and Dad's deck. Why? Because it's already falling apart. The contractor they hired used pressure-treated lumber that was still wet. The whole thing is warping and pulling apart. Dad's furious. I wasn't surprised. Wet lumber should never be used for structural work, especially outdoor structures. Any legitimate contractor would have known that. Are they going to call the guy back to fix it? They tried. His phone's disconnected. I think he was fly-by-night. That sucks. The thing is, Marcus continued, they're kind of in a bind. They spent their savings on this deck, and now they need to basically start over. Mom's been crying about it for weeks. I waited to see where this was going. Maybe you could help them out? I know there was some drama about the pricing before, but they're family, and they're kind of desperate. Marcus, I said, are you asking me to fix a deck for free after they chose someone else because my prices were too high? Not for free, but maybe you could work with them on the pricing? They've learned their lesson about going cheap? I had to give him credit for audacity. Have they called me? I asked. Well, no, I think they're embarrassed. Then why are you calling me? Because you're my brother, and they're our parents. Family is supposed to help family. That phrase again. The same one Mom had used when she wanted me to hire Marcus. The same logic Dad had used when he wanted a discount. Family is supposed to help family, but only when they needed something from me. Marcus, I said, where was this attitude when I was starting my business and eating ramen noodles in a studio apartment? That was different. How? You were making a choice we couldn't support, and they made a choice I can't support. Hiring the cheapest bidder instead of trusting the son who's built a successful business, doing exactly this kind of work. Come on, man. You're really going to hold a grudge? I'm not holding a grudge. I'm running a business. If they want to hire me, they can call me directly and we can discuss it. Just like any other customer. He hung up on me. The call I'd been expecting finally came 3 weeks later. It was Mom. Honey, she said, and I could hear the tears in her voice. We need your help. With what? The deck situation has gotten worse. We had a home inspector come out, and he says we can't use it at all. It's structurally unsafe. We need to tear it down and start over. Okay. The problem is we don't have the money. We spent our savings on the first contractor, and the insurance won't cover it because it was faulty workmanship. I waited. We were hoping. Maybe you could help us. We know we made a mistake before. We should have trusted you from the beginning. What kind of help are you looking for? Well, you do this kind of work. Maybe you could do it at cost. Just materials and labor for your guys, no profit markup. Even now, even when they were desperate, she was still trying to get a discount. Mom, I said, let me ask you something. When Marcus was in college and he needed help with tuition, did you charge him interest on the money you loaned him? Of course not. He's our son. When he was unemployed last year and he needed to move back home for a few months, did you charge him rent? That's different. He was going through a hard time. I've been going through hard times too. The difference is, you didn't help me through mine. We've explained this. We couldn't support a decision we disagreed with, and I can't support a family that only values me when they need something. There was a long silence. So you won't help us? She said finally. I didn't say that. I said I won't give you a discount. If you want to hire my company, I'll put together a bid just like I would for any customer. Professional work, fair pricing, quality guarantee. But we can't afford your regular rates. Then maybe you need to find a way to afford them, or find another solution. How can you be so cold to your own family? And that's when years of frustration finally came pouring out. Cold? I said. Mom, I haven't heard from you in 6 months. The last time we talked, you asked me to hire Marcus for a job he wasn't qualified for, and when I explained why that wouldn't work, you accused me of being jealous. The time before that, you told me it wasn't too late to give up my business and go to college like I should have in the first place. She was quiet. I've been running a successful business for 6 years. I own my own home. I employ 8 people who depend on me for their livelihoods. I've built something I'm proud of, using skills you told me were worthless. And the only time any of you call me is when you want something. That's not true. When's the last time you asked me how business was going? When's the last time you congratulated me on a successful project? When's the last time any of you showed any interest in my life beyond what I could do for you? She couldn't answer. But you know what the really sad part is? I continued. I've been giving family rates all along, just not to you. What do you mean? 3 months ago, I rebuilt Mrs. Chen's front porch for the cost of materials. Last year, I built a wheelchair ramp for Bill down the street and wouldn't let him pay me at all. 2 weeks ago, I spent a Saturday helping the Rodriguez family fix their fence after that storm. Didn't charge them a penny. Why would you do work for free for strangers? They're not strangers. They're my neighbors. They're people who've supported me, who've referred customers to me, who've been there when I needed help. They're family. The silence stretched out. You know what? I said. I'll make you a deal. The same deal I give all my real family. What deal? I'll come over this weekend and assess the damage. I'll put together a plan to fix everything properly. Not just the deck, but all the other issues I noticed last time. The electrical, the roof, the driveway, everything. And I'll do it for free. I could hear her intake of breath. But, I continued, you have to do something first. What? You have to admit that you were wrong about my career. You have to acknowledge that I built something successful with the skills you told me were worthless. And you have to apologize for 6 years of treating me like a failure. Another long silence. That's blackmail, she said finally. No, I said. That's accountability. You want me to treat you like family? Then you need to start treating me like family first. We've always treated you like family. You've treated me like a disappointment who occasionally becomes useful. The conversation ended there. She hung up on me. I didn't hear from any of them for 2 months, which was actually pretty typical. The only difference was that this time, I knew they needed something from me and were choosing pride over practicality. Marcus finally cracked first. He called me on a Thursday evening in late summer. Look, he said without preamble, this situation with Mom and Dad is getting ridiculous. What situation? They're still dealing with the deck thing. They can't afford to hire another contractor, and they're too stubborn to apologize to you. Sounds like a them problem. It's becoming a family problem. They can't use their back door because the deck is unsafe to walk on. They're basically trapped in the house. And winter's coming. I hadn't considered that aspect. The deck connected to their kitchen door, their main entrance to the backyard and garage. They could use the front door, I said. Come on, man. You know that's not practical for groceries and stuff? He was right. But it still wasn't my problem to solve. What do you want me to do, Marcus? Just fix their deck. I'll help pay for it. We can work out some kind of payment plan. With what money? You're still paying off student loans. I'll figure something out. Look, maybe they were wrong about some things. But they're still our parents. Our parents who chose to insult my intelligence and capabilities for years. Okay, yes. They were wrong about that. You've obviously done well for yourself. It was the first time he'd ever admitted that. But they're never going to say that, he continued. You know how they are. They don't apologize. They just move on and pretend things are different. That's not how this works, Marcus. Works. You don't get to treat someone like garbage and then just to move on when you need their help. So what do you want? You want them to grovel? I want them to acknowledge reality. I want them to admit they were wrong. Not just about the deck, but about everything. About my career. About my choices. About my capabilities. And if they don't, then they can figure out their deck problem on their own. He hung up, frustrated. But I could tell he was starting to understand my position. The breakthrough came in October. Dad called me, which surprised me because he'd basically refused to speak to me directly since the deck bid situation. Son, he said, we need to talk. About what? About this situation we're in. Your mother and I have been discussing it, and we think maybe we've been stubborn. I waited. The truth is, he continued, we've been getting advice from friends about the deck situation, and everyone says the same thing. They say we should have trusted you from the beginning. Okay. And looking back, maybe we didn't give your business the respect it deserved. It was a start, but it wasn't enough. Dad, I said, what exactly are you saying? I'm saying we made mistakes. We should have supported you more when you were starting out. And we should have trusted your expertise when we needed the deck work done. And there was a long pause. And we were wrong about your career choice, he said finally. You've obviously built something successful. How successful? Another pause. More successful than we gave you credit for. I could tell this was killing him, but he needed to say it. Dad, I said, I'm going to ask you a direct question, and I need a direct answer. Okay. Do you respect what I do for a living? Silence. Do you believe that my skills have value? More silence. Yes, he said finally. I believe your skills have value. Do you regret telling me that welding wasn't a real profession? The longest pause yet. Yes, I regret saying that. It wasn't a complete apology, but it was more than I'd ever gotten from him before. All right, I said. I'll come over this weekend and take another look at the situation. When I showed up on Saturday morning, the dynamic was completely different. Instead of treating me like the disappointing son who'd finally agreed to help them out, they treated me like a professional contractor they'd hired to solve a problem. Mom had coffee ready and a list of questions about timeline and logistics. Dad had cleared a space in the garage for me to store materials. They both listened carefully as I explained what needed to be done and why. The deck situation was worse than I'd expected. The shoddy contractor hadn't just used wet lumber, he'd also skipped several critical structural elements. The footings were too shallow, the joist spacing was wrong, and the connection to the house wasn't properly flashed, which had allowed water damage to the siding. This is going to be expensive, I told them honestly. We're basically starting from scratch, plus we have to fix the water damage to the house. How expensive? Mom asked. I did the math. With materials, labor for my crew, and the additional structural work that was now necessary, we were looking at about $18,000. But, I continued, I'm going to do this one differently than my usual jobs. They both looked nervous. I'm going to do it myself on weekends, instead of using my crew during business hours. That saves you the labor markup. And I've got relationships with suppliers that can get us better pricing on materials. All in, we're probably looking at $12,000. That's very generous, Dad said. It's fair, I corrected. I'm not making money on this job, but I'm not losing money either. Over the next 6 weeks, I spent my Saturdays rebuilding their deck properly. It was actually relaxing, working with my hands on a smaller project without the pressure of deadlines and customer management. But more importantly, it gave us time to talk. Really talk. For the first time in years. I owe you an apology, Dad said one Saturday while we were setting the new footings. For what? For not believing in you. For thinking that college was the only path to success. I kept working, waiting for him to continue. I grew up different than you, he said. My dad worked construction, and he broke his body doing it. He always told me to get an education so I wouldn't have to work as hard as he did. When you said you wanted to learn a trade, I heard my father saying that college boys were soft, that real men worked with their hands. And you thought I was insulting your choices? Maybe, I don't know. All I know is I was wrong. You didn't choose welding because you couldn't handle college. You chose it because you knew what you were good at and you had a plan. And I've done well with it. You've done better than well. You own a business, you employ people, you have skills that are always in demand. That's more than a lot of people with college degrees can say. It wasn't a complete reconciliation, but it was a start. The project finished up right before Thanksgiving. The new deck was beautiful, better than anything they could have afforded from a regular contractor, because I'd used premium materials at cost and taken the time to do custom details that most contractors would charge extra for. But the real victory came the following week, when Dad called me with a different kind of request. Son, he said, we've got a neighbor who's been asking about your company. Their son is getting married next spring, and they want to have the reception in their backyard. They need some custom work done, a pergola, some built-in seating, that kind of thing. Okay, I said. I gave them your business card. I told them you do excellent work, and you're completely trustworthy. It was a small thing, but it represented a huge shift. For the first time in my adult life, my father was actively promoting my business instead of undermining it. I appreciate that, I said. There's one more thing, he added. Your mother wants to know if you'd be willing to come to Thanksgiving dinner this year. As a family. I thought about it. The old hurts were still there, but the dynamic had changed. They'd acknowledged my success. They'd apologized, in their way, and they'd treated me with respect during the deck project. Will Marcus be there? I asked. Yes. And will he be making jokes about blue-collar work or asking for career advice? Dad chuckled. I think Marcus has learned some things, too. His engineering career hasn't exactly gone according to plan, and watching you run your own business has been educational for him. I showed up to Thanksgiving dinner for the first time in 3 years. The house felt different, maybe because I'd just spent 6 weeks working on it, or maybe because the family dynamics had shifted. Marcus was there with his girlfriend Sarah, who I'd never met before. He'd finally found a stable engineering job that he liked, though it paid less than what I'd made as a second-year business owner. So, he said as we stood around in the kitchen while Mom finished cooking, I owe you an apology too. For what? For being a condescending asshole about your career choice. For thinking that my college degree made me smarter than you. And now? Now I realize that you were the smart one all along. You figured out what you were good at, you got trained in it efficiently, and you built a business around it. Meanwhile, I spent 4 years and $80,000 learning things I don't use in my actual job. College isn't worthless, I said. It's just not the only path to success. No, but trade school was definitely the right path for you, and probably would have been for me too, if I'm being honest. During dinner, something happened that had never happened before. My parents asked me about my work, not in the dismissive way they used to, but with genuine interest. How many employees do you have now? Mom asked. 8 full-time, plus I bring in specialists for certain projects. And they all know welding? Some do. But we do more than just welding now. We're a full-service fabrication and repair company. Custom architectural metalwork, industrial equipment repair, specialized construction projects. That sounds complicated, Dad said. It is. That's why there's good money in it. Most contractors won't take on projects that require custom solutions. Speaking of money, Marcus said, if you don't mind me asking, how well has the business done? It was a question they'd never asked before, and I wasn't sure how to answer it without sounding like I was bragging. Well enough that I'm not worried about student loan payments, I said, glancing at Marcus. Damn, he said, laughing. That's better than most people with college degrees. After dinner, Dad pulled me aside. Dad, I have something for you, he said, handing me an envelope. Inside was a check for $12,000, exactly what I'd charged them for the deck work. Dad, I said, we already settled this. No, we settled the cost of materials and your time. This is different. What do you mean? This is 6 years of Christmas and birthday presents that we should have given you but didn't, because we were too proud to admit we were wrong about your choices. I looked at the check, then at him. I don't need your money, Dad. I know you don't. That's not why I'm giving it to you. I'm giving it to you because you're my son, and I should have been supporting you all along instead of waiting until I needed something from you. And if I hadn't been successful, would you still be apologizing? He thought about that. Probably not, he said honestly. And that makes me even more wrong than I thought. It's been 3 years since that Thanksgiving, and my relationship with my family has completely transformed. Not perfect. There's still some residual awkwardness from those years of conflict, but functional and respectful. My business is doing better than ever. We're up to 12 employees now, and we're booked solid through next summer. I've been able to buy out 2 smaller competitors, and we're looking at expanding into commercial HVAC work. Marcus ended up leaving engineering entirely. He's working as a project manager for a residential construction company, and he's much happier than he ever was trying to make his degree work for him. He still has student loan debt, but he's making progress on it. My parents have become my biggest advocates. They brag about my business to their friends, refer customers to me, and actually seem proud of what I've accomplished. Dad has started telling people that I'm the successful entrepreneur in the family. Story 6. My gold digger sister tried to steal my dead wife's inheritance. I destroyed her life, and now she is begging. Using a throwaway because this story involves family, and I don't want it traced back to my main account. Also, some people might think I went too far, but honestly, I don't care anymore. Background. I 38 male, my sister is 35 female, and this happened about 8 months ago. It's a long story, but stick with me. The ending is absolutely worth it. Some of you might think my revenge was excessive, but after you hear what she did, I think you'll understand why I had to go nuclear. TLDR at the bottom, but seriously, read the whole thing. This woman got exactly what she deserved. Let me start by giving you some background on my family dynamics, because it's important to understand how we got here. My name is Derek, obviously fake, and I work as a senior financial analyst for a major investment firm in Dallas. I make around $165,000 a year, which isn't billionaire money, but it's pretty solid for Texas. I wasn't always successful, though. Growing up, our family struggled financially after my dad left when I was 12. Mom worked 2 jobs just to keep us afloat. My sister Brittany is 3 years younger than me, and from day one she believed the world owed her everything. While I was studying my rear end off and working part-time jobs throughout high school, she was focused entirely on her appearance and finding guys to pay for her lifestyle. I'm talking about a girl who would throw tantrums if she didn't get designer clothes for her birthday, while Mom was choosing between groceries and the electric bill. After high school, I got a partial scholarship to the University of Texas for finance and economics. I worked nights at a call center to pay for what the scholarship didn't cover, graduated with honors, and landed an entry-level position at an investment firm. Worked my way up over 15 years to where I am now. Brittany? She lasted exactly 1 semester at community college before dropping out to become an influencer. By influencer, I mean she posted photos on Instagram for her 1,800 followers while cycling through different wealthy guys who would pay her bills for a few months before getting tired of her act. The contrast between our lives drove her absolutely insane. Here I was, the boring numbers guy, according to her, making 6 figures while she was still living with Mom and relying on whatever sucker she was dating that month. Then I met Sarah, and everything changed for the better. Sarah was a nurse practitioner at Presbyterian Hospital. Smart, beautiful, hardworking, and somehow she saw something in my awkward financial analyst personality. We met at a coffee shop near the hospital. I was there reviewing client portfolios. She was studying for a certification exam. We started talking about healthcare economics, and one thing led to another. We dated for 2 years before I proposed with a ring that cost me 3 months' salary. Sarah was worth every penny. Brittany despised Sarah from their first meeting, mainly because Sarah saw right through her gold digger routine and refused to pretend otherwise. While everyone else in our family walked on eggshells around Brittany's mood swings and financial demands, Sarah treated her like the spoiled adult child she was. After our wedding, Sarah and I bought a house in Plano for $620,000. Sarah's father, who was a retired cardiologist, helped with the down payment as a wedding gift. The house was Sarah's dream: 4 bedrooms, gourmet kitchen, swimming pool in the backyard. We were planning to fill those extra bedrooms with children someday. Brittany made snide comments about our house constantly. "Must be nice having daddy pay for everything," she'd say to Sarah whenever the house came up in conversation. Never mind that I was making the mortgage payments and Sarah was working 50-hour weeks saving lives. In Brittany's twisted worldview, any success that wasn't hers was somehow unfair or undeserved. The tension got so bad that Sarah and I started declining family events if we knew Brittany would be there. Our lives were simply more peaceful, without her constant drama and passive-aggressive comments about our privileged lifestyle. Everything was perfect for 3 years. Sarah and I were trying for kids, planning vacations, building the life we'd always dreamed of. Then our world ended on a Thursday night in February. Sarah was driving home from a late shift at the hospital. The roads were clear, weather was fine. She was being completely responsible like always. Some idiot teenager was texting while driving and ran a red light at 45 miles per hour, T-boning Sarah's car on the driver's side. Sarah died instantly. The teenager walked away with minor scratches. At 36 years old, I became a widower. The first few weeks after Sarah's funeral were a complete blur. I took extended leave from work and basically became a hermit in our house. Sarah's parents were destroyed. She was their only child, and they'd already lost her mother to cancer 5 years earlier. My mom tried to help, but she was dealing with her own grief and honestly didn't know how to handle the situation. Brittany, however, was strange from the very beginning. She showed up to the funeral wearing a tight black dress that was completely inappropriate for the occasion. She spent most of the service taking selfies to remember Sarah and kept talking about how everything happens for a reason, and Sarah's in a better place now. The day after the funeral, she came to my house uninvited with a casserole and immediately started talking about how I probably should sell this big house since it's just you now. When I told her I wasn't ready to make any major decisions, she got this calculating look in her eyes that should have been a massive red flag. Over the next month, Brittany kept bringing up money in every conversation. How was I handling the mortgage payments alone? Did Sarah have life insurance through the hospital? What was I planning to do with all of Sarah's jewelry and personal belongings? Every single conversation somehow circled back to my financial situation, which should have been obvious. But I was too messed up with grief to think clearly. The truth was, money wasn't really an issue for me. Sarah and I both carried substantial life insurance policies through our employers. Between that payout, our savings account, and the fact that the teenager's insurance company was going to pay a significant wrongful death settlement to avoid a lengthy court battle, I was actually in better financial shape than I'd ever been in my life. Of course, no amount of money could bring Sarah back, which made the whole thing feel meaningless. But I kept this financial information completely to myself. Years of working in finance had taught me that people act very differently when they know you have money, and I wasn't in the right headspace to deal with that kind of attention. About 6 weeks after Sarah passed away, Brittany started mentioning her own financial problems during our conversations. Her latest sugar daddy had dumped her. She was behind on her apartment rent, her car payments were overdue, and she'd maxed out her credit cards. She'd already hit up mom for money, but mom was barely surviving on her social security checks. "I just need a small loan," she'd say during our phone calls. "Like $4,000 to get caught up on everything. I'll pay you back as soon as I find steady work." The thing is, Brittany had never held a legitimate job for more than a few months in her entire adult life. Her idea of finding steady work meant finding another wealthy guy to support her lifestyle. I told her I couldn't help right now, because I was dealing with my own situation and wasn't thinking clearly about money. That's when she started getting nasty with me. "You're being so selfish, Derek. Sarah's gone and you need to accept that reality and move on with your life. You obviously have money now and you won't even help your own sister who's struggling." Wait, obviously have money? I hadn't told anyone about the insurance payouts or the pending settlement. "I'm not stupid," she continued. "Sarah's dad is loaded. She was making good money as a nurse practitioner. You guys obviously had life insurance policies. Plus, there's going to be a huge settlement from that teenager's insurance company. You're probably sitting on $500,000. The fact that she had calculated all of this while I was barely functioning day to day, really bothered me. But instead of confronting her about it, I just told her I didn't want to discuss money and asked her to drop the subject. Big mistake. I should have seen what was coming next. 2 months after Sarah's death, it was my mom's 65th birthday. I absolutely did not want to attend any kind of family gathering, but Mom had been through enough watching me grieve, and I didn't want to disappoint her on her special day. The party was at Mom's small apartment, just immediate family. Me, Mom, Brittany, and a couple of aunts and uncles I rarely saw anymore. I brought an expensive bottle of sparkling cider and a gift card to Mom's favorite restaurant, trying my best to act normal, even though I felt terrible inside. Everything seemed relatively normal at first. We had dinner, birthday cake, opened presents. I was actually starting to relax for the first time in months, thinking maybe I could handle family gatherings again. Then, Brittany stood up and announced she had something important to share with everyone. Before we finish celebrating, I have something serious that Marcus needs to know, she said, pulling out her smartphone. It's about Sarah. My blood went completely cold. What was she planning to do? I've been going through some of Sarah's old social media posts and messages, Brittany continued, and I discovered something that Derek deserves to know about. Sarah was having an affair. The entire room went dead silent. I stared at her like she'd lost her mind. That's complete nonsense and you know it, I said firmly. I have proof right here, she replied, holding up her phone. Screenshots of text messages between Sarah and her supervisor from the hospital. They were planning to meet up at hotels, talking about how unhappy they were in their marriages, making plans to leave their spouses. She started reading these supposedly intimate text messages between Sarah and some hospital administrator I'd never heard of. According to Brittany's evidence, Sarah had been cheating for months and was planning to divorce me to be with this other man. Everyone was staring at me, waiting for my reaction. My aunts looked shocked and horrified. My mom looked like she was about to cry. My uncle was shaking his head in disbelief. Let me see that phone, I demanded. Brittany clutched it against her chest protectively. I know this is hard to hear, but you deserve to know the truth about who Sarah really was. I stood up, probably looking like I was ready to commit violence. Give me the phone, Brittany. Derek, please calm down, she said in this fake, concerned voice. I know you're upset, but getting angry at me won't change what Sarah did to you. That's when everything clicked into place. This wasn't about exposing some affair that never happened. This was about something else entirely. Brittany had spent weeks fishing for information about my financial situation, and now she was trying to destroy Sarah's memory and reputation. But why would she do something so horrible? What do you want? I asked directly. She looked confused and innocent. What do you mean? Cut the act. You didn't just randomly discover these messages. You want something from me. What is it? Brittany glanced around the room at our family members, then back at me with crocodile tears in her eyes. Well, since you asked, I think it's only fair that some of Sarah's life insurance money should go to the people she hurt with her lies and betrayal. The people she hurt? Our family, especially Mom. Think about how much emotional stress Sarah's deception has caused all of us. Mom deserves some kind of compensation for the pain and suffering. I almost started laughing at the absurdity. You want me to give Mom money because of your made-up affair story? It's not made up, Brittany snapped, dropping her fake sympathy act. And I think $80,000 would be appropriate compensation for what our family has endured because of Sarah's betrayal. There it was. She had invented this elaborate lie about Sarah cheating to justify demanding money from me. Not asking for a loan this time, making an actual demand for cash based on complete fiction. Those messages are fake, I said quietly. Prove it, she challenged me. I don't have to prove anything. Sarah's dead, you idiot. You. Even if she had been cheating, which she absolutely wasn't, that doesn't entitle you to a single penny. The room erupted in chaos. My aunt started chiming in about how I should hear Brittany out and consider what's best for the family. My mom was crying, saying she didn't want any money. She just wanted us to stop fighting on her birthday. I looked around at these people, my own family, and realized they were actually considering the possibility that Sarah might have been unfaithful based on some obviously fake screenshots that Brittany had probably created in 5 minutes. None of them were questioning her story or wondering why she'd waited 2 months to bring this up. That's when I decided to really mess with her head. You know what, Brittany? You might be right about Sarah. I've been in denial, but looking back, there were some suspicious signs that I ignored. Her eyes lit up with greed and fake sympathy. I'm so sorry you had to find out this way, Derek. I know it's painful, but you deserve the truth. Yeah, and you're probably right about the money situation too. It wouldn't be fair for me to keep all of her life insurance when she was planning to leave me anyway. Exactly, Brittany said, unable to hide her excitement anymore. So here's what I'm going to do. I'll give you that $80,000 you mentioned. But first, I want you to post those screenshots on your social media accounts. Sarah's family and all her coworkers should know what kind of person she really was, don't you think? Brittany's face went pale. I I don't think that's really necessary. Oh, but it absolutely is necessary. If Sarah was really an unfaithful person like you're claiming, then everyone should know about it. Post the screenshots on Facebook, Instagram, everywhere. Tag her parents and her hospital colleagues. Let everyone see your evidence. Derek, that seems pretty harsh. Harsh? You just told our entire family that my dead wife was a cheater and demanded money based on that accusation. If you really believe what you're saying, then you should have no problem sharing the proof publicly. Unless ... I let the word hang in the air. Unless what? She asked weakly. Unless you made the whole thing up to scam money out of me. The room was completely silent again. Everyone was looking at Brittany, waiting for her to agree to post the screenshots publicly. She was trapped and she knew it. Maybe we should just keep this private for Sarah's memory and her family. No, I said, standing up. I think I'll pass on the whole arrangement. Thanks for the birthday dinner, Mom. I'm going home now. I walked out, leaving Brittany stammering excuses about why she suddenly didn't want to share her evidence with the world. But I wasn't finished with her. Not even close. The drive home from Mom's birthday party was when I made the decision to completely destroy Brittany's life. Not just refuse her money, actually ruin her entire existence. She had tried to trash Sarah's memory for cash, and that was absolutely unforgivable. Here's the thing about working in finance. We're naturally paranoid, and we document everything meticulously. I'd been keeping records of Brittany's nonsense for years, mostly just to vent my frustrations to Sarah about whatever drama Brittany was causing that week. That night, I pulled out my laptop and started going through everything I had collected about my sister over the years. Text messages, emails, social media screenshots, financial records I'd helped her with in the past when she begged for budgeting advice. The picture that emerged was of someone who wasn't just entitled and manipulative, but genuinely unstable and potentially criminal. Some highlights from my Brittany documentation files: screenshots of her bragging on Instagram about getting rent money from different guys without even sleeping with them. Text messages where she admitted to lying about birth control to try to trap a wealthy ex-boyfriend into marriage. It didn't work, and he paid for the termination. Records of her stealing money from Mom's purse during Christmas visits over the past 3 years. Photos she'd posted then quickly deleted of herself wearing jewelry that mysteriously went missing from our aunt's house. Screenshots of her selling counterfeit designer purses on Facebook Marketplace. Evidence that she'd been claiming unemployment benefits while working under-the-table jobs at various establishments. But the real treasure trove was her recent activity. Remember how she'd been asking detailed questions about my financial situation? It turns out she'd been doing much more than just asking innocent questions. A few days after the birthday party disaster, I received a call from my bank about some unusual account activity. Apparently, someone had called claiming to be me and asking about my account balances and recent transactions. They didn't provide any information because the caller couldn't answer basic security questions, but the bank flagged it as suspicious and wanted to make me aware. The caller ID number they provided? Brittany's cell phone. I also discovered that she'd been calling Sarah's life insurance company, claiming to be Sarah's sister-in-law, and asking about beneficiary information and payout schedules. Again, she didn't get any information because she wasn't authorized, but the fact that she had attempted it told me everything I needed to know about her intentions. This woman wasn't just asking for money. She was actively investigating my finances and trying to figure out exactly how much she could potentially steal from me. So I decided to help her with that research project. I spent the next evening creating a completely fake financial portfolio document showing that I was worth approximately $2.6 million between life insurance payouts, the wrongful death settlement, investment accounts, and property equity. I made it look like an official document from my financial advisor, complete with letterhead, account numbers, and professional formatting. Then I set up a meeting with Brittany to apologize for how I'd reacted at Mom's birthday party. A few days later, I called Brittany and asked if she wanted to meet for coffee. I used my most sincere, grieving widower voice and told her I'd been thinking about what she'd said at Mom's party and that maybe I had been too defensive and unreasonable. She agreed immediately, of course. She could smell money from a mile away. We met at a coffee shop near her apartment. She showed up wearing a brand new outfit that probably cost more than her monthly rent, clearly financed by whatever new sucker she'd found, and immediately launched into her fake sympathy routine. "I'm so glad you called, Derek. I've been really worried about you. I know the truth about Sarah is difficult to accept, But it's better that you know what really happened. I nodded along, playing my part perfectly. You're absolutely right. I've been in denial about a lot of things. Sarah, money, family responsibilities. I need to start making better decisions. That's so mature of you, she said, practically vibrating with anticipation. Actually, I wanted to show you something. I met with my financial advisor yesterday to get my affairs organized and plan for the future. I pulled out the fake portfolio I'd created and slid it across the table. Brittany's eyes went wide as she scanned the numbers. Holy cow, Derek! You're worth almost $3 million? Keep your voice down, I said, glancing around nervously. I don't want random people knowing about this. She was staring at the documents like they were made of pure gold. I had no idea the settlement was going to be this substantial. Most of it is from the wrongful death payout. The teenager's insurance company is paying $1.7 million to avoid going to trial. Plus, Sarah's life insurance, my existing savings, the house equity, my 401k. This is incredible, she whispered. You could do absolutely anything. Travel the world, buy a mansion, invest in businesses, whatever you want. Yeah, but I've been thinking about what you said at Mom's party. About family obligations. About how Sarah's betrayal affected everyone. Maybe I should be sharing some of this wealth. Brittany tried to play it cool, but I could see the greed practically radiating from her eyes. I mean, I wasn't trying to pressure you or anything, but it would be wonderful if Mom could retire comfortably, you know? Absolutely. I was thinking about giving her around $150,000. And maybe something for you too, since you were brave enough to tell me the truth about Sarah when everyone else was protecting me from it. Really? She was practically drooling at this point. Sure, maybe $120,000? I know you've been struggling financially, and family should help family when they can. Brittany's mask completely slipped away. She wasn't even pretending to be sympathetic anymore, just calculating how she was going to spend her windfall. That would completely change my life, Derek. I could pay off all my debts, get a reliable car, maybe put a down payment on a nice condo. Yeah, well, you deserve it for looking out for me, I said. There's just one small thing I need from you first. Anything, she said immediately. I need you to help me go through Sarah's personal belongings. There might be some things I need to find. Documents. Maybe some additional evidence of the affair. I want to make sure I have everything organized before I finalize all the insurance claims. Of course. When do you want to do this? This weekend? You could come over Saturday morning and we'll go through her closet, her desk, all her personal stuff. It would be much easier having someone else there for emotional support. We arranged the time, and I walked her to her car. As she was getting in, she grabbed my arm with fake sincerity. Derek, I just want you to know how proud I am of you for handling this so maturely. Sarah didn't deserve someone as good as you. I smiled and nodded, watching her drive away in her beat-up Honda that was probably going to be repossessed within the month. Saturday morning couldn't come fast enough. Saturday morning, Brittany arrived at my house exactly on time, carrying a coffee and wearing latex gloves like she was about to perform some kind of surgical procedure. I brought gloves so we don't contaminate any potential evidence, she said with complete seriousness. Evidence of an affair that never happened. The audacity was truly impressive. Good thinking, I replied. Sarah's home office is upstairs. I haven't been able to go through it yet because it's too emotional. We went upstairs to what used to be Sarah's workspace. She would do paperwork there, study for medical certifications, video call with her nursing school friends. I'd barely entered the room since she died, because it still smelled like her perfume, and had all her personal items exactly where she'd left them. Where should we start looking? Brittany asked, eyeing Sarah's desk like it might contain buried treasure. Maybe her computer? She might have saved messages or emails there that would give us more information. Brittany practically lunged for the laptop. Do you know her password? Yeah, she used our wedding anniversary date for everything. I logged into Sarah's computer and opened her email program. Brittany leaned over my shoulder, breathing down my neck as she scanned through months of boring medical correspondence, messages with friends, and work-related communications. Nothing suspicious here, she muttered after several minutes. What about her text messages? I don't think they sync to the computer automatically. Her phone was completely destroyed in the accident. Brittany looked disappointed. What about physical evidence? Love letters, hotel receipts, anything like that? Maybe check her desk drawers and filing cabinet? For the next hour and a half, I watched my sister tear through Sarah's personal belongings like a burglar searching for valuables. She went through every drawer, every folder, every box. She even checked behind picture frames looking for hidden notes or documents. It was absolutely disgusting watching her paw through Sarah's private things, but I needed to let her dig her own grave deeper. I'm not finding anything, she finally said, clearly frustrated. Are you absolutely sure she was having an affair? Well, you showed me those text messages at Mom's party. I assumed there would be additional evidence. Right, the messages. Brittany looked uncomfortable suddenly. Maybe she deleted everything else to cover her tracks. Can I see those screenshots again? I want to examine them more carefully now that I'm thinking clearer. I don't have them with me right now. But they're saved on your phone, right? Actually, I think I accidentally deleted them when I was clearing up storage space last week. I stared at her in disbelief. You deleted the only evidence of my wife's affair? It was a complete accident. But Derek, you admitted yourself that you suspected she was cheating. Maybe we don't need the messages to know it's true. This was absolutely perfect. She was admitting she had no evidence while still trying to maintain her ridiculous lie. Brittany, can I ask you something directly? Sure, anything. If you don't actually have any proof that Sarah was cheating, why did you tell our entire family that she was? The color drained completely from her face. What do you mean? I had proof. I just accidentally lost it. You had screenshots that you conveniently deleted of messages between Sarah and some hospital administrator I've never heard of about an affair you have no other evidence for whatsoever. Derek, where are you going with this? I pulled out my phone and opened the voice recording app. I'm going to ask you one direct question, and I want you to tell me the complete truth. Did Sarah actually have an affair, or did you make that story up to try to get money from me? Brittany's eyes darted around the room like she was looking for an escape route. Why are you recording this conversation? Just answer the question honestly. Look, Derek, even if the affair thing wasn't exactly accurate, Sarah wasn't a perfect person. She was always rude to me, always trying to turn you against your own family. Maybe she deserved to have her reputation questioned a little bit. So you admit you made the whole thing up? I didn't make anything up. I just interpreted some situations differently than you might have. What situations? What exactly did you interpret? She was completely backed into a corner and she knew it. Fine. Maybe there wasn't actually an affair. But that doesn't change the fact that you have all this money now and I'm struggling to survive. Family should help family. There it is, I said, stopping the recording. You slandered my dead wife to try to guilt me into giving you money. Derek, please, you don't understand how desperate my situation is. I'm about to lose my apartment, my car, everything. I just need help. You need help? Let me help you understand something important. I pulled out another folder I'd prepared earlier. This one containing all the evidence I'd compiled of her various scams and fraudulent activities over the years. This is a comprehensive record of every lie you've told, every person you've stolen from, every scam you've attempted to run, including your recent attempts to access my bank accounts and call Sarah's insurance company pretending to be family. Her face went completely white. How did you... I work in finance, Brittany. I know how to track financial records and digital footprints. Did you really think you could call my bank from your own phone number and they wouldn't keep a record of it? I can explain that. Explain what? How you've been researching my finances for months? How you made up a story about Sarah cheating to justify stealing from me? How you've been planning this entire scam since the day she died? Brittany started crying. Not the manipulative tears she usually used to get out of trouble, but genuine panic tears. Please, Derek, I'm sorry. I was desperate and I didn't know what else to do. I didn't mean to hurt anyone. You didn't mean to hurt anyone? You tried to destroy the memory of my dead wife for money. I'll make it right, I promise. I'll tell everyone I was wrong about Sarah. I'll apologize to the whole family. Oh, you're going to do much more than that. Here's exactly what's going to happen, I told Brittany, as she sat crying in Sarah's office chair. You're going to face real consequences for your actions. Serious, life-changing consequences. What do you mean? She asked through her tears. I pulled out copies of everything I'd compiled. Bank records showing her fraudulent unemployment claims, evidence of her stealing from family members, screenshots of her various online scams, and documentation of her attempts to access my financial information illegally. First, I'm sending all of this information to the state unemployment office. You've been collecting benefits while working cash jobs for over a year. That's fraud, and they take it very seriously. Derek, no, please don't. Second, I'm filing police reports for identity theft and attempted fraud based on your calls to my bank and Sarah's insurance company. I never actually stole your identity. You impersonated me to try to access my financial information. That's a felony offense. Brittany was hyperventilating at this point. You can't do this to me. I'm your sister. My sister? My sister wouldn't have tried to destroy my dead wife's reputation for money. I continued laying out her punishment systematically. Third, I'm sending evidence of your theft from Mom and our aunt to them, along with documentation of everything you've stolen over the years. They'll never believe you over me. Really? Because I have security camera footage from Mom's apartment building showing you going through her purse during our Christmas visit, and our aunt has been wondering about her missing jewelry for months. The reality of her situation was finally sinking in completely. What do you want from me? I want you to understand that actions have consequences. For too long, our family has been enabling your behavior, making excuses for you, bailing you out every time you mess up. That ends today. But I'll go to jail. Maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to commit multiple felonies. Brittany literally got down on her knees begging, "Please, Derek, I'll do anything you want. I'll pay you back somehow. I'll never ask for money again. I'll leave town. Whatever you want me to do. It's too late for bargaining now." "No, it's not. Please, I have nowhere else to go. Mom can't afford to help me anymore. I don't have any real friends, no boyfriend. If you do this, I'll have absolutely nothing." "You already have nothing. You just didn't realize it yet." I started walking toward the door. "Oh, and Brittany? That financial portfolio I showed you? Completely fake. I'm not worth anywhere near $3 million. Her face went from desperation to pure rage. "You lying piece of garbage! You set me up!" "Yeah, I did. And you fell for it. Because you're a greedy, stupid person who thought you could steal from your grieving brother. I'll tell everyone what you did. I'll tell them you made up those financial documents. Go ahead. Tell them I tricked you into admitting you made up a story about Sarah cheating. Tell them I caught you trying to steal from me. See how much sympathy you get." I left her crying in Sarah's office and went downstairs to wait for the police to arrive. I'd called them before she came over that morning, telling them I had evidence of someone attempting to commit fraud against me. 20 minutes later, 2 officers showed up at my door. I gave them copies of everything: the bank records, the unemployment fraud evidence, recordings of Brittany's confession, documentation of her attempts to access my financial accounts illegally. "This is pretty comprehensive evidence," one of the officers said after reviewing everything. "How long has this fraudulent activity been going on?" "Years for the small stuff, but the financial crime started right after my wife died." They went upstairs and found Brittany still sitting in Sarah's office, staring at the wall like she was in complete shock. "Ma'am, we need to ask you some questions about attempted fraud and identity theft." Watching them escort her out of my house in handcuffs was the most satisfying moment I'd experienced since Sarah died. But I wasn't finished destroying her life yet. Over the next week, I systematically dismantled what remained of Brittany's existence. The unemployment fraud investigation moved incredibly fast. They suspended her benefits immediately and started proceedings to recover the money she'd fraudulently collected over the past year. The state doesn't mess around with benefit fraud. I sent comprehensive evidence of her various thefts to every family member she'd victimized. Mom was devastated, but finally admitted she'd been enabling Brittany's behavior for decades. Our aunt decided to press charges for the stolen jewelry. I also contacted every guy Brittany had scammed over the years, and there were quite a few of them. I found their contact information through her social media accounts and sent them detailed evidence of her lies and manipulations. Several of them decided to pursue legal action for fraud. The best part? I created a public Facebook page dedicated to exposing scammers in our area. I posted her name, photo, and complete criminal history, all easily searchable on Google. Good luck finding new victims when a simple internet search shows exactly what kind of person you really are. Within 2 weeks, Brittany was facing multiple criminal charges, had no income source, no boyfriend, and was about to be evicted from her apartment. She started calling me constantly, begging for help. "Please, Derek, I'm sorry about everything. I'll never do anything like this again. I just need a place to stay until I figure out my next move." Figure out what? How to be a decent human being? That opportunity sailed a long time ago. "I'm your sister." "No, you're a criminal who tried to steal from me while I was grieving my wife. We're not family anymore." The phone calls got increasingly desperate as her situation deteriorated. When she was finally evicted from her apartment, she started showing up at my house, camping out on my doorstep, crying and begging for help. "I have nowhere else to go, Derek. I'll freeze out here. Should have thought about that before you tried to destroy Sarah's memory for money. I was wrong. I admitted I was wrong. What more do you want from me? I want you to face the consequences of your actions without trying to manipulate your way out of them." Eventually, Mom took her in temporarily, but even that didn't last long. Brittany tried to steal money from Mom's social security check to buy drugs she'd started using to cope with her situation, and Mom finally kicked her out permanently. Last I heard, she was living in her car in a shopping center parking lot, facing multiple court dates, and working at a gas station for minimum wage. Her mugshot from the unemployment fraud arrest appeared in the local newspaper's crime section. The ironic thing is, if she had just asked for help like a normal person instead of trying to scam me, I probably would have given her some money. Not $120,000, but enough to help her get back on her feet temporarily. I'm not completely heartless, but she chose to attack Sarah's memory, and that was absolutely unforgivable. 6 months later, I received a letter from her in county jail. She'd been sentenced to 16 months for the unemployment fraud. It was 5 pages of apologies, promises to change her life, and desperate pleas for me to help with her legal expenses. I fed it through my paper shredder without reading past the first paragraph.